Welcome to part 13 of What If Kami sends Naruto back in time to fix his mistakes. Please remember to like and subscribe as it motivates me to upload more in the future, and as always, link to the fanfiction is in the description. Snake Hunt. Jiraiya returned to the village with scant information on Orochimaru. His normal activity was nowhere to be found, and this made everyone nervous. As Task Force Anaconda was gathered to listen to his report, Jiraiya offered his opinion. Lord Hokage, I believe that the time for Orochimaru to take Sasuke over is closer than any of us wish for. We will need to move out and put pressure on him at the very least. Itachi frowned and his Sharingan activated at the thought of his brother dying to the snake. Then, I believe that we need to move fast and sharp. Jiraiya, I know you don't have much to go on, but if you were to guess, what area of the land of rice paddies would Orochimaru most likely be in? While Jiraiya was thinking seriously, Naruto spoke up. I think he will be in the northeast. He will want to be away from our border, and he had labs in Kiri in the past. I believe we should flash to Lightning Country and hit him from that side. Jiraiya thought for a while longer before nodding. The brat is right. If, and mind you it is an if, but if Orochimaru is still in Rice Country, then he would most likely be in that area. Itachi was in his thinking pose with his right hand up to his chin. Alright, Ruto, contact the Raikage and ask for permission to travel through his lands. You may inform him, and only him, that we are hunting Orochimaru. Also, give him one of your tablets along with my number. I think he will appreciate that gift for allowing us passage. Samui smiled. I will get to see the Raikage earlier than I thought. I can also guide us through Lightning Country. Naruto threw an arm over Samui's shoulder. You ready for your first mission as a Konoha shinobi? And will do, Lord Hokage. As we get to Lightning Country's southern border, I will enter Sage Mode. I will also dispatch some clones and summon an ally that has been craving some action. Ino giggled a bit before chirping, you know, I think Sue and Sasuke would actually get along. While everyone was confused, the Senju family continued their chat about Naruto's summons. Temari laughed at Ino's joke. Nah, Sue is actually cool. Don't compare him to some emo duck butt. Hinata had a fist over her mouth to suppress a giggle. The Jura Ninja Corps is super cool. Will you summon all of them? Nah, just Sue and his body doubles will be enough. I don't need them fighting our battles, I just want to cover more ground. Naruto answered. Jiraiya seemed interested and didn't want to be left out. Why is this Sue relevant? Because, grandfather, he can use body double much like I can use my shadow clones. He is a perfect scout, and he has shadow movement as well. Oh, you should bring Ranga over as well. It would be funny for him to meet Akamaru. Ino spoke up suddenly. Kiba seemed interested by this. Ranga. Why would Akamaru find him interesting? Temari smiled fondly at the thought of the fluffy Tempest Wolf. He is the leader of the dire wolf pack that is loyal to Lord Rimuru. He is also about 5 times as big as Akamaru. He can also summon storms. Samui added. The Raikage begged him for the right to summon him, but he said that he already made an exception to allow Naruto to summon him. Naruto shrugged. Hey, I built all of the dire wolves' custom houses. Much like the Inuzuka, the pack believes in loyalty. Itachi coughed to bring the conversation back to the mission. Okay, so it sounds like we will have a bunch of allies. What formation are you planning on moving in? Naruto stood straighter and became serious again. We will move in 3 groups. I will lead 1, Jiraiya 1 and Tsunade 1. I will be with Samui, Hinata, Shino, and Team 10. Tsunade will lead Team 9 and Team 7. Jiraiya will move with Temari, Shisui and the Anbu team. Each team will have a wood clone of mine as a scout and backup. From Lightning Country, we will enter the northeastern corner of Oto. We will spread out about 30 miles apart. We will hit bases hard and fast. My wood clones will create clones to clean up any bases and evacuate any survivors. We will need to perform 3 up and downs to get all of Lightning Country because we will have a 120-mile spread with my Sage Mode. Itachi was nodding along impressed, as was Jiraiya, but he had another question. And what is the plan to avoid alarming Orochimaru? How will you clear bases that quickly? Naruto's serious face turned into a feral smirk. We will bring them to the surface. Mama and I are prolific Earth users. We will use mobile Earth core to raise the bases above ground and surprise the hell out of them. Temari can use her steam wind, Mama can smash, I can break, and Jiraiya is strong enough. The important thing is to update your maps, keep in contact with the tablets and move quickly. Jiraiya pouted, look, brat, I can still bring the heat. Don't underestimate me. Okay, Grandpa, was Naruto's only reply, but he had to fight super hard to hide his smile. Shisui spoke up this time, okay, so we all move hard and fast. What is the plan for when we encounter Orochimaru? Tsunade punched a fist into her open palm, draw him into a fight, allow Naruto to erect his barrier, then the snake gets smashed. Naruto and the rest of the group laughed at that, but Naruto elaborated. Look, Mama and Jiraiya have dibs on the snake. Before they show up and scare him off, you will summon me with a Hiraishin Kunai, which everyone will carry. I will lock the snake in and then flash to bring Mama and or Jiraiya. Tsunade growled, it is not and or, I will be the one to finish the snake. Tayuya shivered, holy fucking shit. I want to fucking bitch slap myself because I just felt sorry for the ass-loving snake pedophile. I mean, who the fuck feels sorry for a cunt like Orochimaru? Another round of laughs from the group. Itachi groaned, this group was taking this mission far too lightly. They could be up against an army of shinobi, and they are laughing. Alright, we will contact the Raikage tonight and plan on teleporting tomorrow. Everyone, this is serious and game faces will need to be on. Dismissed. After a passionate night of love-making and sweet-talking, Naruto and his girls joined the others outside of the Konoha teleportation tower. Equipment checks were ongoing, and everyone was in a unique combat attire. Naruto wove seals into a new type of armor that everyone wore. The seals completely hid chakra signatures, strengthened the fabric, had self-repair functions and were fireproof. Each person was also given an antidote kit since Orochimaru always loved his poisons. The outfits consisted of black and green combat vests with a camo pattern in them. Everyone wore hooded, long-sleeve combat shirts that were a matte black in color and seemed to be hard to look at directly. The combat pants were forest green and had a cargo pocket on each side. The wrist bracers and shin guards were made of chakra metal, painted a matte black, and everyone was able to carry their weapons and supplies in their storage seals. The boots also had sound-suppressing seals on the soles, which allowed everyone to move silently. Alright everyone, behave yourselves while in Kumo and use the time to get your minds right. We will be traveling through Kumo for a whole day before crossing the border. Into Oto. Team leaders, status report. Naruto said as he stood in front of the three teams. Relax, brat, we are all good here. Jiraiya said, finding it extremely awkward to take orders from his grandson. Good to go, Bubba. Tsunade said with a thumbs up. Alright, we will teleport in 3 groups. I will remain behind to top off the chakra battery. Mama, ladies first, Naruto said. As he watched his best friends and family enter the teleporter, Naruto closed his eyes and offered a prayer to Kami. Up in her realm, the goddess was smiling down. She had put out the notice for a watch party and she was excited to see a good bit of action. Minato and Kushina exchanged knowing looks as they watched the goddess space out while going through the actions of her administrative duties. This had become more prevalent throughout the years and the chosen one's parents caught on after a while. Be safe, Sochi, whispered Kushina under her breath. Relax, Shina, our son has got this. Minato soothed his eternal spouse. Lady Kami, is there any way we could take a sneak peek into Orochimaru's lair? Kami distractedly clicked her fingers and sighed despondently as the screen changed away from Naruto. Otogakure, Hidden Lab 66. Orochimaru was sitting on his throne in his throne room that was poorly lit by chakra torches. The crackling of the torches often soothed the snake Sannin, and he enjoyed residing in dank, dark places. After altering his body so much and syncing with a part of the great white snake, Orochimaru noticed that he enjoyed the underground environment far more than the sun. His faithful buttbu, attendant, yes, his faithful attendant Kabuto stirred him from his musings. Lord Orochimaru, test subject 1402 was a failure. We attempted to graft his DNA with a combination of Sasuke's and Hashirama's. Kabuto said as he rose from his bow and pushed up his glasses. Orochimaru hissed, failure was expected in his line of work, but the gene splicing had hit a roadblock recently and it was dissatisfying. Very well, on to the next one. Tell me, Kabuto, how is my next vessel doing? Kabuto smirked devilishly. Well, Lord Orochimaru, the loyalty seal has completely taken effect. His Stage 2 curse mark is fully integrated, and he uses it to train daily. The steroids have taken effect and strengthened his muscles and body. Project Fake Friend was successful and his Mangekyo Sharingan was awakened 3 months ago, and it is stable. We project he will be fully ready for your greatness in less than a month. Orochimaru hissed in pleasure and wrung his hands together. Very good. While this body has not fully rejected me yet, it will happen soon. Any word on the Akatsuki or Konoha? Kabuto pushed up his glasses and the smirk fell from his face. Akatsuki has fully taken over Earth Country. They are working hand in hand with Rain Country, and they are mobilizing. One of our bases was destroyed by Hizashi Hyuga and Kisame Hoshigake last week. We do not know what they are looking for, but it seems to be an item, not you. Orochimaru nodded slimily. Yes, their beloved ring. I still cannot fathom how it enabled astral teleportation. I do not wish to give it up yet. Kabuto bowed. Very well, my lord. As far as Konoha, the Senju family will be returning there soon. Their little trip around the world strengthened Suna, Kiri, Kumo and Wave. We have been unable to infiltrate any of those nations. We recently lost our spy in Konoha and the member we had on the council is no longer able to provide information. Orochimaru chuckled evilly. Ah, yes, Homura, that old goat. It was entertaining to use him. His hatred for young Naruto was most enjoyable to toy with. What of the Senju family and their children? Kabuto sighed. They are more protected than anything. We cannot begin to dissect the seals protecting their compounds. As far as we know, the boy, Hashi, will be in Konoha with the Senju family. According to rumors, Tsunade, Naruto, Yosuke, Yami and Kurama Senju are all high A to SS rank. The spouses, Samui, Tamari and Ino are all rumored to be strong as well. It is unknown how they will integrate into Konoha's forces, but we may be able to isolate one on a mission. Orochimaru hissed in anger. That intelligence leaves me wanting, Kabuto. Kabuto bowed. My apologies, Lord Orochimaru, their travels make it difficult to glean information. If rumors are to be believed, Naruto used one of the Lord First's most powerful jutsus. The rumors claim it destroyed a mountain in Kumo with a single punch. Orochimaru seemed pensive. He heard stories of Hashirama's jutsus, but it always seemed like puffed-up myth. Very well. We know to avoid direct combat with the Senju boy. Keep an eye open for an opportunity to get the child. Border of Kumo and Oto, Day 1 of Project Snake Hunt. The travel to the Kumo border went smoothly. It helped that Naruto and Samui were known all throughout Lightning Country and any patrols they encountered instantly recognized them in the Sannin. The group rested overnight in the foothills of the mountains overnight and it was a fairly restless night's sleep. The nerves were starting to settle in as the gravity of the situation settled upon their shoulders. They were planning on walking into a foreign country with an unknown number of shinobi and samurai. That alone would normally be enough to set someone on edge. Then, they added that they were going to be taking out horror houses that Orochimaru called labs. Terrifying projections of the monstrosities they may or may not encounter filled their minds and kept them from their sleep. All in all, everyone that wasn't a Senju rolled around in their sleeping bags as sleep evaded them on the first night. In Naruto's tent, he remained awake looking at the roof of the tent as his 3 wives claimed his arms and chest. He loved his Fuinjutsu tent and the king-sized bed that he kept sealed in it. He was working with Kurama to review memories, plot out their routes and review contingency plans. He had faith in his friends, but unlike him, they weren't Energizer bunnies. They would need to rest and recover within enemy territory. He frowned as the concern for his friends weighed heavily upon his heart. Within the seal, Kurama and Chome felt the nervous anticipation and they marveled as a lightning storm gave them an impromptu light show in the seal. Kurama sighed before opening the mental connection. Relax, partner. We will keep your mates and family safe. Naruto closed his eyes and dove into the seal since he wasn't going to sleep anyway. I know, Q, but there is only so much we can do. We know we are strong, but are they strong enough to survive this? Chome was listening and feeling everything. She spoke next. Ruto, in the short time I have dwelled in you, I have come to believe in you. Believe in yourself and your mates. My sister is right, Ruto. Believe in yourself, believe in us and we will succeed. Kurama added before shrinking and rubbing his muzzle against Naruto's cheek. Naruto pet his best friend on his snout and snuggled into his warm aura. Thanks Kurama. I love you. When we are done with this, I am making mama take a back seat so you can start your family. Kurama chuckled and Chome blushed. Kurama returned Naruto's affectionate words. I love you like my own, Ruto. If my kids turn out just like you, then I would be the happiest kitsune in any world. Chome watched on with tears spilling from her bug eyes. She wanted nothing more than to experience that feeling with a partner. It was strange, for centuries all she wanted was to be left well enough alone. She wanted to watch over her domain and care for the insects of the planet. After less than a year with this human child, all she wanted was to experience the bond she felt between Naruto and Kurama. The only question for her was, could she find that bond within Naruto, or would she need to go to another? As Naruto woke up at first light, he prepared a breakfast for his task force. He greeted Shisui, who pulled the final watch and unsealed everything he needed to make a good breakfast. It was the least he could do for his team that was willingly following him into the belly of the beast. As he formed clones to prepare the breakfast, he wanted to get his mind right through a round of meditation. He walked away from his group and took up a meditative lotus position to center himself and prepare for the future endeavors. He fell right into his natural place in the world, and he smiled internally as the natural energy greeted him playfully. The energy of the wind was flippant, playful, strong and endless. It countered so uniquely with the rigid strength, enduring energy and proud nature of the earth. The two seamlessly integrated with each other within his body, and he enjoyed 10 minutes of internal reflection before letting his chakra spread to the surrounding lands. Naruto's eyes snapped open, and he shook his head and chuckled before lifting his head to the heavens and whispering thank you. He pushed the gathered senjutsu chakra into an amped-up wooden clone, unsealed a scroll, wrote a letter and gave the scroll to his clone. No words were needed before the clone dashed off in the opposite direction of Oto. Naruto watched it go and returned to the camp just in time to join everyone for breakfast. After breakfast, the group did one more round of final checks, tested the tablet communications, and Naruto passed out a Hiraishin kunai to each member of the task force. Naruto took the center route with Samui, Hinata, Shino and Team 10. On his left, taking the eastern border route, was Jiraiya with Temari, Shisui and Anbu Team RO. On the right, moving more toward the center of the country, was Tsunade and Anko along with Teams 9 and 7. With a final wave, they moved out at high speeds and began the hunt. Naruto's plan and methods proved effective after 3 hours into the incursion of the Land of Rice. The first team to sense out a base was Jiraiya's team. The team was moving with Sue, and one of the body doubles knelt in front of Naruto's wood clone before speaking. The Konoha teams came to a halt to listen. Lord Naruto, the location you sensed was indeed a base of Orochimaru. I sent body doubles to infiltrate and they confirmed 80 to 100 enemy shinobi with over 100 captives. The Naruto clone scratched the back of its neck sheepishly. Sue, what have I told you about the Lord? Nonsense. Anyway, this will provide our first test. Jiraiya, how do you wish to proceed? Jiraiya thought for a bit. Are you enough to really raise the base out of the ground? The Naruto clone shrugged, most likely. Naruto really amped us up and we even have Kurama's chakra. What about the prisoners? Temari asked. The clone answered once more, I should be able to sense them out and make sure they aren't harmed. Until we evacuate them, no wide-scale jutsu. Jiraiya was nodding and smashed his fists together. Okay, hard and fast with no survivors. We cannot let Orochimaru know about this on our first day in the country. Everyone nodded and Sue led the group to the location. After a quick check with his body doubles that had infiltrated the base, Sue confirmed that the enemy guards near the prisoners were neutralized. Naruto sensed the captives, and he encased that room in a hardened earth chakra before performing his next jutsu. The clone gathered a crap load of natural energy and weaved through hand signs with its eyes closed. The clone placed its hands on the ground and called out, Earth style, Earth and mobile core. The group watched in amazement as the underground base appeared on a massive column of earth that now hovered nearly 4 stories in the air. The bottom level, with the test chamber and captives, was now on ground level and Team RO immediately began evacuating the captives out of the area. They were supremely confused, and a couple were unable to move on their own until Naruto clones appeared and disappeared and leaf shunshuns. While the evacuation was ongoing, many Oto shinobi were peering over the edges of the base and many shouts of confusion were heard. The shouts slowly died down as a slide made of pink crystals appeared from the ledge that used to be the third sublevel, and a blue-haired kunoichi led about 20 shinobi out and more were rallying to her side. As she reached ground level, the all clear was given for the captives and a barrier was erected that completely surrounded the massive earthen construct. "What the fuck are you doing here, Konoha nin?" the blue-haired kunoichi asked as she formed crystalline kunai in her hands. Jiraiya stepped forward and spoke, "Stand down and surrender or die. Those are your only two choices, Otogakure shinobi." The blue-haired woman spoke, "I am Guren, Lord Orochimaru's most faithful follower. There is no way I would submit to Konoha dogs." At that moment, a shinobi ran up to Guren and whispered something in her ear, which made her eyes widen and a look of shock fixed itself upon her face. Jiraiya sighed and nodded to Temari, who had already unsealed her new and improved battle fan. Naruto had it made of chakra metal and the fabric of the fan was made from a chakra-conducting weave. Rather than her old 3 moons, Temari had 5 sickles and each sickle had a special seal in it. The moons were an auburn red with golden edging, in honor of her lover. Temari smirked devilishly as she opened up all 5 sickles, gathered an insane amount of chakra and scared the shit out of her team. The members of Jiraiya's team stood well behind Temari since they knew what was coming. It was something that made them feel sorry for the enemy shinobi, even if they were Oto scum. Temari spun in an entrancing dance that shaped her chakra and the fan glowed light blue with steam-released chakra. Guren didn't wait to see what was happening next, she ordered an attack on the enemy shinobi and a volley of kunai and shuriken raced ahead of charging shinobi. Temari was now spinning rapidly before she turned her fan perpendicular to the ground and called out, "Steam release, sickle weasel steam storm." The results of Temari's jutsu were absolutely devastating. After a minute, the steam cleared out and a gruesome sight met Jiraiya's team. They were no longer rookies, but anyone looking at corpses with the skin sloshing off would have a hard time stomaching it. Of the 40 or so shinobi that were outside the base, only 3 managed to survive the steam storm and only barely so. Even the Anbu shifted uncomfortably as the steam cleared. It wasn't every day that they watched a teenage girl slaughter trained shinobi with such ease. Guren was running short on air inside of her crystal prison. She used the technique on herself to protect herself from the steam storm and she had to channel a sizable amount of her chakra into reinforcing the crystalline walls that protected her. Even so, she was nearly cooked and would have been had the steam storm ceased a minute later. As her pink crystals disintegrated, she looked around and saw most of her backup was in rough shape. She sucked her teeth and activated the cursed seal Lord Orochimaru had given her. She was going to need it if she stood any chance against Jiraiya and his backup. As Guren's natural beauty transformed into a hideous crystalline monster, she growled at the gathered Konoha crowd. "That wasn't very nice. I will kill you for your transgressions against Lord Orochimaru." Jiraiya belted out a laugh. "Look, girly monster thing, I recommend you undo the cursed seal and come peacefully. If you do that, then the Jiraiya the Gallant will offer you protection." Guren's hideous form laughed crazily, "Like I would ever go with the buffoon teammate of my lord. It should be noted that in exchange for the unstable and evil power of the cursed seal." As Jiraiya pouted, Temari gave orders by hand signs to Shisui and Team RO. "Go, into, base. Find, research. I got this." Temari knew this girl from Naruto's memories, but according to those memories, this girl shouldn't have had the cursed seal of earth. Oh well, if Temari saves her then Naruto can remove the seal. Jiraiya recovered from his pout, and he sighed as Temari stepped forward and asked him to stay out of it. He knew the girl was strong, but there was no way he was going to leave her alone. If she died, Jiraiya would be ripped to pieces. "Be careful, Temari. That bloodline and the cursed seal are scary." Temari turned to Jiraiya, offered a confident smile and asked a question, "Does this barrier shield from Biju Chakra?" Jiraiya shrugged, "We will have to absorb the remnants, but the clone should be able to do that." "Cut loose." Temari turned toward her adversary and shot a smirk that was a mixture of sexy, sassy and confident. "Let's go, Kokuo. Let's start at one tail." Kokuo let out a dolphin laugh within the seal. "Eek eek eek, let me enjoy my first battle alongside my new partner." Yeah, you're my ride or die, Ko. Let's do it." Temari thought before turning to the now fully transformed Guren. Gurren swished her pink, crystalline tail behind her and growled, "Try not to die too quickly, little girl." The two disappeared in blurs of pink and blue chakra. Kokuo's chakra cloak came out as a light blue when he gave it willingly to Temari. Temari's sensu fans were encompassed in a dark blue chakra due to the amount of wind chakra channeling through them, and Gurren was surprised when her black and pink crystals were repeatedly sliced through like tissue paper. After taking a knee to the chin, Gurren flipped backwards and created some distance. As Gurren landed, she was forced to erect a crystal wall to block two wind blades that nearly cut through the wind wall and exploded in a steam cloud as they were halfway through. Even through the haze of bloodlust caused by the cursed seal, Gurren knew that this shouldn't be possible. She roared out and launched a jagged ball of crystal from her tail and into the sky. She formed a hand sign and the ball of crystal detonated forcefully and sent shards of black and pink crystal flying at high speeds toward the ground. Temari saw what was happening and simply did a twirl with her two fans before a concave wind wall smashed into the falling crystals. With that threat dealt with, Temari turned in her wind dance and dodged a punch from Gurren. She twirled once more, and as she twirled, a steam cloud formed a 10-meter circle around her and Gurren roared out in pain. Temari felt the crystal wielder jump away to her right and she unsealed her big fan, performed one powerful spin and launched, wind style, planar wind, in Gurren's direction. Gurren's face was still recovering from the fresh steam burns, and as she was landing, a wall of steam was heading toward her at high speeds. Gurren erected another crystal wall to absorb the blunt force of the winds, but she was cooked once more as the steam ate away at her crystals and skin. Gurren roared out in pain and frustration before she weaved through hand signs and created a massive pink dragon with black streaks running through it. The dragon matched her roar and flew towards Temari's position. Temari saw the massive pink dragon and she knew that it was a threat. It was too big to dodge, and it would likely explode in crystal shrapnel when it landed. Temari opened her fan all the way and called upon Kokuo's chakra to channel it into the fan. She had to focus to make this work, but Temari knew that she could do it as she swung her fan and called out, "Wind style, sickle weasel wind net." A wind net composed of interlinked wind blades spanned nearly 100 square meters and raced to meet the wind dragon halfway through. As the two jutsu clashed, the wind net shredded the dragon and chunks of crystal fell to the ground as the jutsu lost its form. The overpowered wind net continued past the dragon and slammed into a surprised Gurren. The Oto Kunoichi only had time to raise her crystal-encased arms up in AX guard to shelter her face and torso. As the wind jutsu impacted, Gurren let out a bestial roar of pain, and she was flung backward into the raised earth of Naruto's jutsu. She crashed hard into the wall and was implanted nearly 10 feet into the hardened earth that was holding the base. The end result of the wind net was Gurren having multiple wind cuts on her body that were bleeding profusely. Her tail was cut off and she had a nasty gash on the center of her chest. Due to the damage, her cursed markings receded into the seal, and she was left in a crumpled mess. Jiraiya appeared behind Temari, who had reabsorbed Kokuo's chakra cloak, and whistled in appreciation and approval. "That was impressive, lil lady." Temari huffed and flipped her head to get one of her bangs out of her eye. "Yeah, compared to Ruto that was nothing." Jiraiya shrugged and laughed, "Haha, yeah, I would imagine that was easy compared to the strongest shinobi in the world. So, how much of Kokuo's chakra can you call out now?" Temari sighed, "It is taking too long to get used to. I can only call on 2 tails. Mama says that it takes an adult body a lot longer to get used to the yokai. I mean, Naruto has had Kurama's chakra in this body for 12 years now. I have only partnered with Kokuo for a year and a half." Kokuo chimed in through the seal, "You are doing well, dear girl. We are nearly to the 3rd tail, we just need to acclimate your body to my yokai." "Thanks, Ko, but we still have the waterfall of reflection and Naruto wants us to go to the sage's temple once we get to 4 tails." Temari thought back. Kokuo was nodding his head in the seal, yes, but I know you will succeed there." Temari was broken from her conversation with Kokuo by Jiraiya's next words, "That is great. 2 tails in less than 2 years is nothing to scoff at. By all rights, you shouldn't have been able to integrate a foreign chakra source at your age. Don't be too hard on yourselves." "Thanks, Grandpa. When you're not being a super perv, you aren't too bad." Temari shot back glibly. Jiraiya chuckled and scratched the back of his neck sheepishly, "Haha, thanks kiddo. Now, Let's get that monster girl in a stasis scroll and get this base cleaned up. A Naruto clone walked up. Nice fight, Temari. I will soak up the excess yokai, so don't worry about your little secret getting out. Temari nodded to the clone and walked up to the unconscious Gurren and placed a medical stasis seal on her chest before sealing her into a prisoner scroll. The cleanup of the base took a little over an hour before the barrier was dropped in. Jiraiya's team informed the others of their first encounter. Evidently, Naruto's team had already taken out 2 smaller outposts and Tsunade's team had killed 2 teams of Oto shinobi. This let everyone know that the Sage Mode search method was going to be effective for this mission. The first night in the land of rice paddies passed by uneventfully. The teams synced up their current positions and all 3 campsites were protected by strong, multi-leveled barriers. Naruto really grew to appreciate his specialization in barrier fuinjutsu and space-time fuinjutsu. The next day passed, and a couple minor outposts and shinobi teams were killed, and another night passed. It wasn't until the 3rd day of the snake hunt until things went wild. Hidden Lab 66 Otogakure. Orochimaru was sparring against Sasuke when the door to the training room was opened. Orochimaru blocked Sasuke's lightning-covered katana with his kusanagi and turned to address Kabuto. For what reason have you disturbed our training time? Orochimaru hissed. Kabuto bowed. Lord Orochimaru, something is wrong. We have received no updates or distress signals from multiple bases and there are 8 teams that are now a day late in reporting. Orochimaru seemed to think for a bit before he hissed in displeasure, which bases and where are the intruders now? Kabuto frowned. Lord Orochimaru, my best guess is that they came in from Kumo. All of our bases in the northeastern regions have gone quiet. As I stated, I have received no alarms or reports, but it is strange for them all to go offline at the same time. Sasuke scoffed, send me and I will kill them. Nobody can stand up to the might of the Uchiha, especially with this power you have given me. Orochimaru frowned, no, my dear boy, you will not go. What direction are they moving, Kabuto? I have to assume this is an enemy. Kabuto's eyes darted to the side. In truth, he didn't know how this was possible. My lord, if it is an enemy, then they are many. For this many bases to go dark, they would have to be hitting 10 or more a day. I do not have enough information to make an accurate call, but my best guess is they will be here tomorrow. Sasuke smirked and swished his sword through the air. I will finally get a chance to test my power. Orochimaru smiled at how bloodthirsty his next vessel was. Very well, Kabuto, gather Gurren, Kimimaro, Karen, Suigetsu and get ready to let Jugo out of his cage. If they want a fight, I will give them a fight. Kabuto pushed his glasses up nervously. My lord, Gurren's base is one that has gone dark. Orochimaru hissed in displeasure, what of the others? They should respond to our call. We can have them here by tomorrow noon. Kabuto answered. Very well, have them move to our location immediately. I have too many experiments here to abandon. Sasuke, dear boy, get ready to fight. Orochimaru hissed. Naruto's camp, morning of day 3. Naruto woke from his tent, swapped with a clone and left Ino and Samui resting in the tent. It was 4 a.m. and he took over for Shikamaru for the last shift of the watch. He created a clone and left it in Overwatch. He exited the barrier and climbed into a tree for a deeper round of meditation. He had started each day this way because his senses expanded much further when he had the chance to go deeper into the meditation. As he was expanding his senses, he smiled at the peaceful presence of nature. It was then that the first ping returned to him and then another. 2 elite Jonin level chakra signatures were converging on a location. This was it, this is what he was looking for. He calmed his mind and steadied his breathing to maintain in the trance and track their projected location. During that trance, he felt 2 more high level signatures also on the move. It left him with one conclusion: Orochimaru knew or at least suspected that they were here. Naruto returned to the camp and called Jiraiya and Tsunade. He gave them their new heading and shared what he had found. The end location of the elite chakra signatures was 43 miles from his current location and slightly farther for the 2. After convincing from Tsunade, Naruto eventually agreed to meet up in a nearby town and the groups would move out together. Tsunade knew to trust Naruto and she knew it would be better if they went at this together. Naruto, be prepared to deploy your barrier. Tsunade said through the tablet. Mama, If I use that barrier then I will only be able to provide support with clones, Naruto said with concern. That's fine, brat. Trust your comrades. It is more important to ensure that the snake doesn't get away. With your sensing, we will know where he plans to lay his trap. You and your clones will get in place and form a massive isolation barrier. Jiraiya said in his serious mode. Before Naruto could protest, Tsunade spoke again. Ruto, the perv is right. We will be able to handle this. Plus, your clones are more than enough support, kiddo. Naruto relented, knowing that they only had one shot at this. Okay, mama. Have fun with the snake. A thought then popped into Naruto's head. Wait, if I am doing the barrier then who will handle Sasuke? Both Sannin were stumped for a bit, but Jiraiya answered, why not leave him to the rookies? You have trained your friend up and they are all strong. Tsunade was speculative, if he has the Mangekyo, that could be a problem. Naruto winced at the thought of his friends fighting against a Mangekyo. Yeah, well, let's see how things play out. My clone will be able to support them, and I think it would be monumental for Kiba and Sakura to take part in Sasuke's capture. Sounds like a plan. See you in Patty Village in 3 hours. Tsunade said before cutting her connection to the tablet. Naruto went and got the campsite moving. Everyone packed up quickly and they were moving out at top speed to get to Patty Village. Naruto stopped and entered Sage Mode every couple miles to conduct a quick search. They had to deal with a squad or two, but they were no real issue. As they approached Patty Village, Naruto called out a total of 12 enemies. They approached slowly and Naruto pointed out the targets. Naruto took 5, clones are awesome. Asuma took 2, while Ino, Samui, Shino, Choji and Shikamaru each took 1. After dispatching them quietly and knocking out any witnesses, Naruto ordered his team to spread out and set up a perimeter around the village. Within 30 minutes, the other 2 teams arrived to find Naruto deep in a meditative trance. Naruto's eyes cracked open to see everyone standing in front of him. Okay, as of right now, they are all within a hidden base. The masking seals are strong on that one and they cover a wider than normal area. The base is approximately 10 miles away to our south by southwest. My best guess is that it is over a square mile of underground labyrinth. Shisui whistled, that is a big base. Quite a bit larger than any of the ones we encountered. Sakura spoke up, Naruto, were you able to sense Sasuke? Naruto looked at her apologetically, no, I have been trying but the protective seals are stronger than the ones we have encountered so far. It makes me think that this is the main base and I believe we will find Orochimaru there, which means Sasuke should be there too. Naruto turned to Sue and Ranga, you too, I appreciate all of your help. If you wish to participate, I will not deny you. If you want to head back to Rimuru, I understand. The massive dire wolf spun his tail excitedly and kicked up an impromptu twister that messed up all of the Kunoichi's hair. No need, Master Ruto. I wish to fight. Demon Lord Rimuru wishes for us to aid you in battle. Sue nodded silently, this has been good training. Your shinobi senses are a good test. I will scout with shadow movement, and I will work to free the prisoners once the fighting begins. Everyone watched on as Naruto spoke to his summons until Kiba spoke up, so, what is the battle plan? Jiraiya laughed boisterously, it is good and all to have a plan, but any plan only lasts until you take the first shot in your jaw. Tsunade scoffed, spoken like a true brawler. Alright, brats, listen up. Orochimaru is mine. Jiraiya will be with me. Naruto is on barrier duty and will only provide support with clones. The rookies are on Sasuke duty. The elites will be divided up to Shisui, Team RO and then we can play it by ear. Anko pouted, I wanted a piece of the snake. Oh well, give it to him good for me, mama. This earned a confident smile and a nod from Tsunade. Kiba smashed his fist into his open palm, finally, I will get a chance to punch that arrogant punk in the jaw. Naruto doused Kiba's enthusiasm, look guys, the most likely scenario is Sasuke using the cursed seal. Each of those seals has a strong loyalty seal worked in and we don't know how much damage Orochimaru has done to Sasuke. Expect a difficult fight, but that is what I have prepared you for. Work together, trap him, play on his ego, do whatever you have to do to stay safe. Shika, you are team lead for the rookies. Come up with a plan and implement it. Shikamaru nodded, fully alert. I would say that it is too troublesome, but he is a comrade. We will get it done, Ruto. Ino, no mind jutsu on him. I don't want you going into that mess. Tsunade cautioned. And don't be scared to call on Lady Katsuyu. You won't stop me from being able to summon her. Ino nodded in understanding and then excitement. Yes, Mama. Yes, Lady Tsunade. Hinata chimed in. The two girls were each given the right to summon the slugs during the training trip, and this would be their first opportunity to actually use it. Okay, everyone, I am going to head out with Sue and Ranga. Give me a 5-minute head start. When everything is started and I sense you within range, I will erect the barrier. You will know it is up because it will block all light for about 10 seconds, so don't freak out. Good luck everyone, watch each other's backs and stay safe. With nods, shouts and claps on the back, Naruto took off towards where he now sensed multiple shinobi guarding the target location. This would finally be settled, and one less enemy piece would be on the board. Naruto created 3 clones, encompassed himself in Senjutsu chakra and hid his chakra signature so that he could not be detected. It took him about 15 minutes to get in place and he felt his clones still. Naruto calmed his mind and prepared to erect his most powerful barrier. He had never done it over such a large area, but in his Golden Sage mode, it should be possible. He felt the task force approaching and he started the long sequence of hand seals after dispelling a shadow clone to let the others know to begin as well. The 112 hand sign sequence took over a minute for Naruto and his clones to perform, but when he felt Task Force Anaconda come to a stop in front of multiple chakra signatures, he activated the barrier. Tsunade led Task Force Anaconda with guidance from Naruto's wood clone. The clone called it out and the task force spread out in a tree line that opened into a wide field. Across the field, she saw her old teammate and a small army. She saw a red-headed girl pointing toward them and she could see the smirk on Orochimaru's face from the tree line. Jiraiya had already called Ma and Pa to him so he could enter Sage mode, and Tsunade closed her eyes and the blue shadowing appeared around her eyes. She would hold off on using the strength of 1,000 feet mark because if she used that then she would likely hurt her allies in the collateral damage. Okay, everyone, when the barrier activates and the world goes dark, I will launch the opening attack. Make sure you stay here until I am done with that. Tsunade ordered in a commanding voice. Yes ma'am. The task force responded. Suddenly, before any pleasantries could be exchanged, the world went black, truly black, and it was terrifying for everyone, even the Konoha task force that knew it was coming. On the Oto side, Orochimaru began panicking as the world went black and he could sense a massive buildup of chakra. He heard Karen scream, "Take cover," which only served to throw his troops into chaos. Then, the ground shuddered violently in a deafening roar and Orochimaru heard screams from his men as the earth gave way below his feet. As Orochimaru was falling, the lights turned back on, and his eyes widened as a chasm formed front Tsunade's foot and spread all the way towards his shinobi. He quickly looked down and saw that the chasm was nearly 50 meters deep and 300 meters wide, and it stretched for at least a kilometer. It tore right through his base, and he gulped in anticipation and worry as he summoned one of Manda's children to stop his fall. In a puff of smoke, Orochimaru stood on top of a giant king cobra and the snake climbed the walls of the chasm back to the surface. Orochimaru glared at the Konoha shinobi that dared to attack him. Tsunade, that was not a very polite greeting between old teammates. Tsunade growled and sent a withering glare at Orochimaru. That is an old title. The man I knew died long ago. You are now just a creepy, snake-ass fucking pedophile with no sense of morality or humanity. Tsuyu cheered and Anko snickered at Tsunade's remark, but the surviving Oto shinobi glared and shouted out insults at Tsunade. Orochimaru hissed in displeasure as he saw Sasuke summon another of the Snake Clan and Kabuto jumped up to join Orochimaru. He sighed as he saw an enraged Jugo charging toward the Konoha shinobi. That boy could never control his bloodlust once he enters that form. There are bigger issues here. That barrier isolates everything within. Anything summoned in here will not be able to get back to the summoning realm. Kabuto said as he looked around to analyze the barrier. The snake shook its head. Orochimaru, if you summoned me to my death, my father will eat you. While Orochimaru was thinking, Jiraiya already saw the enraged and Senjutsu-empowered enemy charging at them. That guy is using Senjutsu chakra. I will handle him. I don't want anyone taking that fight if they don't know what they are up against. I will join you once I have finished with him. Jiraiya dashed toward Jugo and sent him flying with a strong punch from his frog kumite taijutsu style. Tsunade nicked her thumb, smeared blood on her palm and summoned a large fragment of Katsuyu. It dwarfed the snake summon and caused many of the enemy shinobi to take several steps backwards in fear. As she stood atop the giant slug, she spoke to Orochimaru, "Do you want to fight here or find a place of our own? I brought more than enough friends to keep your butt buddies occupied." Once again, Anko and Tayuya's cackling echoed across the field and incensed the snake Sannin. Orochimaru hissed deeply, "Kabuto, you use young Motome and I will summon Manda. We will need him in this fight." The now known Motome hissed in displeasure, "You would summon my father into a barrier he cannot escape from. You are a coward." Motome began writhing in anger until Sasuke jumped to his nose and put him under a hypnotic spell. "He will obey, now, my lord," Sasuke said lowly. Orochimaru smiled creepily and licked his lips at the thought of being able to use those eyes. "Thank you, Sasuke. I am going to summon Manda, could you do that once more for me?" Sasuke bowed, "Yes, my lord." Thus, after Manda was summoned, his usual rant was cut off before it could even begin once he looked Sasuke in the eyes. "That is despicable. I am not a fan of the Snake Clan, but for a summoner to treat his summons in such a manner is foul," Katsuyu said in a soggy growl. Tsunade sucked her teeth, also offended by such a display. She looked down from Katsuyu. "Everyone have their assignments." Shisui nodded, "Yes, Lady Tsunade. I will fight the Kagaya. Anko will fight Kabuto. Temari and Hinata are on mob duty. The rookies will fight Sasuke. Samui will fight Water Boy." Tsunade nodded, "All right, move out and watch each other's backs." Battle for Otogakure. Tsunade's newly created gorge divided the potential battlefield nearly down the middle. Task Force Anaconda stood behind Tsunade and they each had their assignments. Orochimaru was on Manda's head and the snake was coiled up on the right side of the gorge. After a hand sign from Orochimaru, his subordinates left his side and went to the left side of the gorge to lead the 300 or so remaining Oto shinobi. The task force shifted to meet the current state of the battlefield, and everyone was tensed waiting for the battle to start. Tsunade and Katsuyu charged down the right flank and Katsuyu let out a cloud of bluish poison that flew quickly toward Manda, who tunneled underground to avoid the corrosive acid. Tsunade paused Katsuyu's charge and waited for the inevitable surfacing of Manda. She knew from previous experience that the snake would tunnel up from the spot she least expects and sure enough, she didn't have to wait long. Manda flew out of the earthen tunnel at astounding speeds and slammed his head into Katsuyu. Normally, he would bite and poison his opponents, but that was useless against the slug boss. Katsuyu reeled from the impact, but Tsunade was ready for it, and she launched herself at Manda's head that was just lifting from the headbutt he gave Katsuyu. Tsunade's fist glowed with a potent, bluish-green chakra before it impacted with Manda's head and sent the massive snake boss flying nearly 100 meters before the giant snake writhed on the ground in pain. Tsunade landed from her flight and saw another sizable glob of acid flying toward the writhing snake. Orochimaru was impressed by Tsunade's strength and a trickle of sweat fell down the back of his neck. It wasn't long ago that Orochimaru considered Tsunade the weakest of the Sannin, but that was clearly no longer the case. He had jumped off of Manda's head mid-flight and he saw the glob of acid heading for Manda. He still needed Manda and couldn't let the acid hit him. He flipped through hand seals and overloaded the wind style, great breakthrough. The blunt force wind impacted the glob of acid and caused it to explode in a cloud that hovered in between the two Sannin. Manda, operate on your own. Wait for your chance to strike and take it. Orochimaru ordered. Yes, Lord Orochimaru. Manda hissed in pain with his mind clearly clouded. After Orochimaru landed, he dashed toward Tsunade to change the fight to a mid-range fight where he could abuse his advantage in ninjutsu. Orochimaru opened with a horde of snakes that all charged at Tsunade. While Tsunade was distracted, mind you it was only a couple seconds, Orochimaru weaved through hand signs and cast a powerful, double-layered genjutsu, illusion arts, bloody nightmare, at Tsunade. Tsunade was in sage mode, and she felt the foreign chakra enter her system and she dispelled it almost immediately. Despite that, a powerful image of a bloody battlefield filled with those she loves, and the smell of blood imprinted itself on her nose. Instead of freezing, Tsunade let out a fearsome roar of anger. Anger at her old teammate that would dare use such a tactic against her. Tsunade punched the ground, which created a crater and sent multiple chunks of earth into the air. Tsunade disappeared in a blur and kicked the earthen chunks towards Orochimaru. Orochimaru had hoped that the genjutsu would incapacitate Tsunade, or at least buy him a couple seconds. He wasn't expecting the anger that she released, nor the fearsome power, nor the 10 house-sized chunks of earth that were sailing towards him. Orochimaru instinctively tried to "kawarimi" to avoid the massive missiles, but his eyes widened in surprise when he was unable to activate the jutsu. Manda darted in front of Orochimaru and batted away 2 of the earthen missiles with his tail. He then took 2 of the missiles in his body, which sent the massive snake boss flying and screeching in pain. Tsunade followed up the earthen missiles and launched herself in the air toward Orochimaru. She began flipping quickly in air and building momentum and chakra into her legs. As Orochimaru barely dodged one of the last earth chunks, Tsunade crashed next to him with a glowing heel. The earth shattered in a powerful explosion underneath the weight of her heel, and Orochimaru was sent flying with half of his body disintegrated from the power of the heel drop. The crater created by this attack was nearly 200 meters wide and it was at least 80 meters deep. Orochimaru pulled himself out of the remains of his throat and fear clenched around his shriveled heart for the first time in decades. This wasn't the Tsunade he remembered, and he no longer believed that he could defeat her in open combat. The snake Sannin attempted to shunshin, he attempted to reverse summon, he attempted everything he could think of, but nothing worked. It must be due to this barrier, and Orochimaru couldn't discover a weakness to the barrier unless he was near it. With his decision made, Orochimaru darted away from Tsunade and the new crater towards the nearest edge of the barrier. Tsunade growled as she sensed Orochimaru heading away from her, but she was forced to deal with Manda. The snake lunged out of the side of her newly created crater and Tsunade scowled before activating her strength of 1,000 feet seal. Her body glowed golden as the markings spread across her body. The power saturated every fiber of every muscle, and the slug Sannin directed that power to her right arm. As Manda lunged forward with his mouth open, Tsunade lashed out with a golden fist and the energy traveled from her body, down her right arm and out of her right fist. Everyone in the barrier felt the buildup of power and their eyes widened as a golden beam of energy tore across the other side of the battlefield and toward the barrier. It shredded earth and every other obstacle on its way before it slammed into the barrier in a massive explosion. Motome hissed in despair as he sensed the death of his father, and the Oto forces cowered in fear at the display of power. As the golden chakra explosion dispersed, Manda was nowhere to be seen, and that fact alone sent a surge of fear through the Oto forces. Orochimaru had darted away from the battle, and he felt Tsunade's surge of power, power that shouldn't be possible for a mere woman, power that should belong to him. Orochimaru watched the beam of energy tear through the earth and collide with the barrier nearly 200 meters away. That didn't stop Orochimaru from being caught up in the explosion and getting flung like a ragdoll through the debris. Orochimaru once again righted himself and brushed the dust off of his uniform as he stood up. He hissed painfully and scowled deeply as he looked at Tsunade, who had since retracted her strength of 1,000 feet seal and was glaring at him in her sage mode. "How did you gain such power, Tsunade?" Orochimaru said in an attempt to buy time to recover. Tsunade belted out a laugh as she sensed Katsuyu fragmenting to provide healing to the task force. "I trained alongside my grandson. The Kyuubi helped me augment my mark so that I could use it without killing myself, and I learned how to enter a true sage mode. Not that bastardized body modification you use." Orochimaru's frown now split his chin at Tsunade's insult. How can a boy make you that strong? Why are you targeting me? What did I ever do to you?" Orochimaru's panic finally won out, and it spurred him to rattle out his questions. Tsunade bent over in a laugh once more, which frustrated Orochimaru further. Oh my Kami. Ha ha ha. That boy is Kami's blessing to this world. That boy, as you call him, can do more than Hashirama ever dreamed of doing. That boy helped me overcome the many failures of my past, and that boy showed me that the two of us were enough to change the world. Tsunade paused here and caught her breath before her face returned to a serious and threatening visage. "I am targeting you because you stand against everything we stand for. You bring nothing but misery upon this world simply because you wish to satisfy your twisted curiosity. You are evil, Orochi, and I will cleanse you from this world." Orochimaru snarled. He didn't want to bring out this trump card against Tsunade, but it was clear he had no choice. He finished the hand signs he was weaving behind his back, smeared blood on his palm and slammed his hands on the ground. 4 coffins began rising, but they were never destined to complete their master's will. Tsunade darted forward and disintegrated each coffin into splinters with a powerful spin kick. The residual air pressure sent Orochimaru flying once more, and he began pouting as he landed. It wasn't fair. He had worked too hard for this to be his end. He was too close to achieving his true objective for him to give up now. Look, little snake, I need to wrap this up. I will send you to Yami for her to play with your soul before she devours it. Tsunade said with a menace as a chakra aura flared around her. Orochimaru's eyes widened, and he summoned the 3 Rashomon gates to block the golden punch from Tsunade. The first 2 gates were disintegrated and the third fell backwards with cracks all over its form and nearly smushed Orochimaru, who had jumped backwards. Orochimaru used formation of 10,000 snakes and ordered them to attack Tsunade. Tsunade slammed her fists into the earth and pulled out 2 massive balls of stone before she chucked each ball at the swarm of snakes. The balls smashed, clobbered and rolled over most of the slimy bastards before Tsunade disappeared in a burst of speed and reappeared in front of Orochimaru. Orochimaru was at a loss for words, and he was incapable of forming a new plan as Tsunade disappeared from his sight. In the time it took to blink his snake eyes, Tsunade reappeared in front of him and disintegrated his upper body with one of her mountain breaker punches. The lower body of the snake Sannin was tossed unceremoniously against the barrier, and it collided in a wet explosion of flesh and blood against the barrier. If Tsunade didn't know better, she would have missed the little white snake that slithered out of the bloody mess. Too bad for Orochimaru that Tsunade knew better. As the little white snake burrowed into the ground, Tsunade stomped on the earth and a white snake was tossed into the air through the newest crack in the ground. Tsunade grabbed the white snake in her right hand, infused a poisonous medical chakra into the snake and then proceeded to crush the snake in her hands. With a sigh, Tsunade took a seat on the shattered battleground to process the end of a long chapter in her life. Rookies against Sasuke. Sasuke looked down from the head of Motasa, daughter of Manda. Through the haze caused by the cursed seal, he glared down at Sakura, Kiba, Shikamaru, Ino, Choji, Lee, Neji and Tenten. Memories, mostly negative and filled with envy, flickered through Sasuke's mind. He remembered how most of the people in front of him surpassed him and embarrassed him in front of his father and family. He remembered the embarrassment and the negative emotions caused black markings to spread on Sasuke's body. Before Sasuke could address the rookies, 40 Oto shinobi flanked his snake summon ready to defend their master's prize. Sasuke growled and glared down at the Oto shinobi. I do not require your assistance. These peons could never pose a threat to me. One of the Jonin bowed to Sasuke and spoke loud enough for all to hear. Lord Uchiha, Lord Orochimaru would never forgive us if something were to happen to you. Please allow us to assist you. Sasuke scoffed and turned his head aside. Do what you want. Just stay out of my way. Shikamaru took in the latest battlefield situation and issued his orders. Team 9, can you deal with the trash? You can come to assist us after the extras are dealt with. Lee nodded enthusiastically while Tenten began preparing. Neji spoke for his team, it will be easy. Remember to be aware of his cursed seal and Sharingan. Shikamaru nodded, alright, very well. Ino, summon against summon please. Kiba and Choji, tank to the front. Ino and Sakura, take the flanks and wait for your openings. Remember, don't hold back. That cursed seal gives him quite a bit of durability. Sakura seemed to tense at those words, but Kiba nodded confidently. Before the planning could continue, Sasuke spoke in a menacing tone at the Konoha shinobi. You are all pathetic. You could never stand against the might of the Uchiha. Leave at once, I cannot stomach your presence any further. Sakura whimpered under her breath, Sasuke-kun, what happened to you? Kiba growled, look, bastard, we are here to save you. You will come with us back to Konoha whether you want or not. Sasuke let out an evil cackle. Oh please, you are all trash. Very well, words will no longer suffice, come and meet your deaths. Ino summoned a fragment of Katsuyu that was twice as big as Sasuke's snake. The slug launched a glob of acid at the snake, who dug underground much like Manda always did. The acid impacted and took out 5 of the Oto shinobi that had formed up. Moments later, the rookies were forced to scatter as the snake surfaced and spun its tail in a wide area of effect attack. Choji used his Akamaiki style, multi-size technique, to grow his body and he caught the snake by its tail. Ino ordered Katsuyu to launch another gulp of potion at the immobilized snake. Choji released the snake's tail at the last moment and jumped away. The acid impacted the snake summon and began disintegrating it, which caused the snake to screech in pain. Normally, this would have dispelled the snake, but the barrier was preventing the snake from dispelling. Sasuke was forced to watch as his familiar slowly died in front of him, which caused his Mangekyo Sharingan to flare to life. Seeing the target responsible for killing his familiar, Sasuke roared as black flames left his eye and encompassed a flank of Katsuyu. Ino was worried for Katsuyu as she hissed in pain, but she ordered Katsuyu to fragment off the portions caught by the black flames and the slug obeyed her order. The slug was now 2/3 or its normal size, but it was okay. Ino decided that with the snake out of the way, it would be better for the slug to fragment and provide healing to the squad. Thus, each member of the rookies now carried a fragment of Katsuyu for the rest of the battle. After Sasuke's first attack proved to be ineffective, Sasuke unsheathed his katana and darted towards Sakura with his blade encompassed in lightning. Kiba dashed in his way and used the gauntlets Naruto designed for him to absorb the blow from the katana. Kiba began a high-speed taijutsu kenjutsu battle that the others looked to support. Choji waited for his opportunity and Shikamaru was watching the recent developments. Kiba had greatly improved since he joined the other rookies in their training. He had mastered his earth affinity and he used that to harden his skin and reinforce his Inuzuka-style Tai and ninjutsu. That being said, Kiba was no match for Sasuke, even with the backup from Akamaru. Choji created an opening for Kiba to give Akamaru and himself an Inuzuka chakra pill, which enhanced his speed and ability. After Choji's oversized bow staff raised from the ground, Kiba and Akamaru darted towards Sasuke in twin Yatsuga tornadoes as Kiba roared out, Inuzuka style, fang over fang. Sasuke scoffed as he easily dodged the slow attack from Choji, and he prepared himself to counter Kiba's attack. He sheathed his sword in potent lightning chakra and dashed toward the tunneling tornadoes. Sasuke was forced to avert his course quickly when Ino and Sakura sent earth and fire-enhanced shuriken hurtling towards him. This aversion caused his counterattack to fail, but the Inuzuka attack failed to land as well. As Sasuke was recovering, he was forced into the air as a ground sweep from Choji's bow staff tore across the earth. As Sasuke was in the air, his eyes widened as Kiba and Akamaru collided into him in midair. He instinctively pulled upon the power of his eyes and the two tornadoes slammed into a purple ethereal ribcage. The ribcage cracked slightly but held up despite the ferocious attack. As Kiba and Akamaru fell, Sasuke was flung backwards, and the Susanoo ribcage was forced to endure a direct blow from Choji's bow staff that slammed him into the ground in an explosion of earth. Sasuke scowled deeply and the negative emotions drew upon more of the cursed seal's power. He sprouted two hand-like wings on his back and a crooked tail formed at the base of his spine. He emanated a black chakra aura around his body that felt sinister and totally evil. This alerted Naruto, who immediately dispatched a wood clone to assist his friends. Sasuke roared out as the power consumed him and guided him to launch an attack he developed. Blue streaks of lightning appeared around Sasuke and took the form of Senbon as Sasuke roared out, Chidori Senbon, and directed the lightning entities towards the rookies. Ino cursed that they didn't have a wind user in their fight against Sasuke. She took a deep breath and thought, fire style, dragon flame bullet. The fire dragon raced alongside an earth dragon from Sakura and a swing of Choji's bow staff to absorb the lightning attacks. Before Sasuke could roar out in frustration, they all froze and turned their heads to see a massive golden chakra light and a powerful explosion. This momentary distraction created an opening for Sasuke, who disappeared in a burst of speed. Sakura cried out in agony as a fist impacted her face and sent her flying backwards. Kiba roared out in anger as Akamaru was kicked hard and left in a crumpled mess. Shikamaru cursed as Sasuke dodged out of his shadow and Ino was forced to duck and roll from a whirlwind kick that was aimed at her head. Once again, Choji came in clutch by putting pressure on Sasuke, who was fed up when it came to dealing with the oversized boy. Sasuke launched a massive fireball at Choji, who erected an earth wall to absorb the fiery explosion. Kiba recovered from his shock and took advantage of Sasuke's back being turned, and he landed a Gatsuga that forced Sasuke's face into the dirt. Ino backed up Kiba's attack by hitting Sasuke with a fire-style, majestic flame flower jutsu that scorched his back and caused him to hiss in pain. Before Shikamaru's shadow could catch his, Sasuke disappeared and launched towards Ino while his hands sparkled blue, and the sound of chirping birds could be heard all over the battlefield. Sasuke lunged forward towards Ino at insane speeds with his right hand outstretched encased in lightning chakra. Ino began dodging, but she knew the attack would clip her. It was insane how much speed and power the cursed seal gave Sasuke. Suddenly, Naruto appeared in front of Ino and caught the lightning hand in his Mokuden gauntlet. The wood clone was in Sage Mode Level 2, and it looked impassively at Sasuke, who was scowling deeply at the avatar of his inferiority complex. Sasuke roared out in pain and frustration as the clone twisted his forearm and snapped the bones in his forearm and wrist. Sasuke freed his hand and jumped backwards, clutching his injured arm. The power of the cursed seal immediately began healing the wound, but it still caused him a great amount of pain. Seeing Naruto, Sasuke sent another volley of the flames of Amaterasu towards Naruto, who erected a wood wall to intercept the flames. Choji came from behind and his shadow encompassed Sasuke, which let Shikamaru capture him in his shadow binding technique. Sasuke roared out in frustration as he struggled against the bindings of the shadows. Shikamaru struggled to maintain the technique, despite his advanced training in his clan arts. Sasuke's chakra was evil, corrosive and dark, which made it harder to bind down. Naruto, do it now! Shikamaru roared. The Naruto clone walked forward and weaved through a long series of hand signs before calling out, Uzumaki style, chakra lock. The wood clone placed its hands on Sasuke's chest and called, activate, which caused thick black kanji to spread out around the teenage form of Sasuke. As Sasuke's chakra was frozen in place, his Sharingan deactivated and his body slumped to the ground. The clone turned to Ino, I need a stasis scroll. Ino fumbled around in her Fuinjutsu kit and grabbed the required scroll before handing it to Naruto's clone. The clone spread the scroll on the ground and moved Sasuke on top of the scroll before sealing him into it in a puff of chakra smoke. Before Naruto could even roll the scroll back up, a whimpering Sakura ran over. What did you do to Sasuke? Is he going to be okay? She screeched. Not now, you troublesome woman. We need to assist the others in finishing the battle. Shikamaru ordered, which saved the wood clone the trouble of dealing with a Sasuke-distressed Sakura. Shika is right. There is still fighting going on and this is the main base of Orochimaru. Ino said. Kiba was eyeing a red-headed girl that was watching Sasuke's fight and he pointed toward her, which made her flinch. Wasn't she one of the girls Naruto told us to look out for? The wood clone turned and looked at Karen. Ah, yes, that is my cousin. I will deal with this, he said in a cool voice before moving faster than any of the rookies could track. The clone appeared behind a startled Karen and immediately immobilized her in a full Nelson. Hello, cousin. I need you to make a choice. Do you wish to remain loyal to Orochimaru or do you wish to join your family? Karen was startled. She had great sensing ability, but she was never a combat type. She was forced into the servitude of Orochimaru after Kusa sold her to him. Despite herself, she really didn't have a problem conducting the Sanin's experiments because she believed the experimentation would be for the betterment of humanity. That being said, this blonde guy terrified her, and she knew that she was no match for him. What do you mean cousin? What happened to Sok? She whimpered. Karen felt wood binding her up and she felt it difficult to call on her chakra as the clone stepped in front of her. I am Naruto Senju Uzumaki. You are Karen Uzumaki, are you not? Karen simply nodded. Then, you are one of my last remaining cousins. I am rebuilding Uzushio, and I offer you my protection. You need to turn on the snake, tell us what you know and pledge your loyalty to me. I offer you this because I am a true Uzumaki. Family before all, always and forever. Karen's eyes widened and she cast her eyes to the ground in shame. I am not worth saving. The clone lifted Karen's chin and looked deeply into her eyes. She felt the calming presence of his Senjutsu chakra, and the emerald orbs glimmered with power as she peered into their depths. You are family. That is all the reason I need. Karen nodded weakly and embraced Naruto in a passionate hug as she broke down crying. After she lost her mother, life became an instant struggle for survival. Sure, she was naturally and curious and liked experimenting, but she would admit that she was doing something wrong. If this were her chance at redemption, then she would take it, and she instinctively knew that she could trust him. Thank you. I will follow you. She whispered into his chest. Ino sauntered over to Naruto, pulled the clone's head down and placed a passionate kiss on its lips. Ino always loved the feeling of Naruto's lips when he was in sage mode. It was so invigorating to feel the tingle of life energy. Ino turned a cocky smirk to Karen. Heya, I am your cousin-in-law, and this here is my man. Her voice carried a proud and melodious ring to it. Karen just looked between the two in a stupor. Oh, okay then. Nice to meet you, I guess. Alright, cousin, this here is the awkward part. We have a lot of cleanup operations to do and I need you to sleep in a stasis scroll for a while. Naruto's clone said blandly. Karen blanched. A stasis scroll. Why? Is that necessary? Naruto nodded. Yes, I want to trust you, but I can't watch you for our whole stay in Oto. I will flash you to Konoha when I get a chance and you can stay at the Senju compound. Don't worry about it, you won't even feel or remember a thing. Karen nodded her consent weakly. Okay then. I trust you, cousin. Naruto lifted her chin once more and placed a familial kiss on her forehead. Thank you, Karen. I will protect you, and when you wake up, you will have a big, happy family. Karen's eyes lightened and a smile wormed its way onto her face. Ino took that opportunity to speak up. You forgot crazy in that family business. Before Karen could inquire further, her consciousness faded as a stasis seal was applied to her chest. She would enjoy a brief stay in a stasis scroll before she realized the truth behind Ino's words. Anko versus Kabuto. Anko saw the slimy fuck toy standing on top of a snake's head and she turned her head to the side and hawked a loogie. It always disgusted her how this admittedly smart boy chose to be loyal to Orochimaru. Sure, Anko was aware that the kid had a rough upbringing. Sure, Anko didn't blame the kid for betraying Konoha after his treatment en route. However, Anko could not understand why this little boy toy chose to be loyal to Orochimaru, and that disgusted her. She also remembered the memories of Naruto's time in the Fourth Great Shinobi War, and she knew the dire threat this pale bastard represented. For this reason, Anko resolved herself to kill him with her own two hands. She had trained side by side with the strongest shinobi in the world during the training trip. She had progressed by leaps and bounds, and it was time to put those skills to the test. Naruto had warned her that summons would be allowed, but they could not be dispelled. She believed Orochimaru would be dead by the end of the day, and she didn't want to piss off the Snake Clan too much. Plus, it gave her a reason to show off her new skills as a fire, earth and snake mistress. Heya, you four-eyed fuck toy. Think you can give me a good fight? Anko called out, which earned snickers from the Oto shinobi who knew how true her words were. Kabuto's right eyebrow twitched in annoyance, and he scowled when he heard the Oto shinobi laughing. It wasn't his fault that Orochimaru took a fancy to him. Plus, he was able to do all of the experiments he wanted under Orochimaru. Big words for the trash my lord left behind. Anko belted out a laugh, and thanked Kami he did. He would have found my sexy tits and tight pussy disgusting. My butthole thanks you for taking that hit for me. Raucous laughter followed this statement, and Kabuto had his snake lash out with its tail at the unsuspecting Oto shinobi. Kabuto performed a mixture between a hiss and a growl before he answered Anko. If you wish for an exercise in futility, then I will put Lord Orochimaru's failed experiment down. Anko made a bring it gesture with her hand before she weaved through hand signs at lightning speed. She placed her hands on the ground and called out, Earth style, swamp of the underworld. The earth turned soft and soggy under the influence of Anko's chakra, and the snake summon lost its ability to move. It writhed in displeasure before its head was penetrated by a massive earthen spike. Kabuto was forced to jump off of the snake and land in the mud, which stained his cloak and clung to his feet. Anko ran atop the muddy surface as naturally as running on a track and launched herself at Kabuto. The slippery bastard dodged her initial strike, and an agile and fast-paced fight began. They were both practitioners of the hubby style of taijutsu that Orochimaru taught them. The style emphasized being slippery, dodging blows and attacking from unexpected angles. Thus, when two practitioners clashed, it was a high-speed dance of death. After a minute or two of dodging around each other, Anko got bored. She twirled out of a fast straight punch from a bent-over Kabuto, spun to his backside and then used hidden shadow snake hands to strike at Kabuto's neck. The fighters separated and glared at each other before Kabuto put a hand to his neck and saw the trickle of poison and blood. Kabuto scoffed and started laughing evilly. "You think you can poison me? I am as prolific as Lord Orochimaru when it comes to poisons," he proclaimed. Anko took a sassy posture and checked her fingernails before looking up bored towards Kabuto. "Oh, okay then, tell me when it kicks in." "See, I studied poisons and medicines with Shizune and Tsunade. We are all well aware of the snake-based poisons. I prepared this one especially for Orochimaru, but I figure it will work just as well against you since Mama called dibs on Snake Face." Kabuto scoffed at that. "Unlike my lord, I possess the old bloodline. You cannot poison me, snake whore." Anko shrugged off the disrespectful comment. "Meh, I am a married woman now and my wife bangs me better than any man, except maybe one." Anko giggled. Perversely as memories of what Rias shared with her filled her mind. She had to give it to the Gaki, he could really lay some pipe. A twisted grin fixed itself on Kabuto's face. "Ah, yes, Rias Senju. I heard you had a child, maybe once we have finished you all off, I can claim her for my experiments." "I can only." Kabuto was cut off as a fist empowered with divine fury crashed against his jaw and sent him flying. "Make fun of Anko, that's fair play. Make fun of Ruto, that's okay. Take a shot at the Senju children and you are a dead man." Anko's seals glowed blue before phasing out and Anko unleashed a divine ass whooping on the snake's butt buddy. The beating lasted for nearly 10 minutes and Anko begrudgingly admitted that the fuck toy could take a beating, which is probably why Orochimaru cherished him so much. After Anko's fists were coated in Kabuto's blood, she looked around the battlefield and realized that she was taking too long to finish this up. She unsealed the special kunai that Naruto had made for her and lit them with fire chakra until they glowed white. How? The kunai were about twice as big and normal, which made them look more like thicker daggers than simple kunai. As Kabuto once again healed from another terrifying blow, his eyes opened wide at the sight of the flaming kunai. Kabuto channeled chakra to his wrists and forearms and activated his chakra scalpels. He was going to have to dance carefully, otherwise those kunai would shred and singe his wounds, which would disable his ability to heal through them. Kabuto took a shaky, yet combat-ready, posture and prepared himself for Anko's onslaught. Anko lunged forward at speeds easily thrice as fast as she was using during their taijutsu combat, and she planted a fiery kunai into the gut of Kabuto before spinning gracefully out of the path of Kabuto's chakra scalpels. The kunai remained in Kabuto's gut with a searing pain and wafted the smell of burning flesh towards Kabuto's nostrils. As he looked up once more, he saw Anko had summoned another fiery kunai already in hand and she was dashing towards him once more. Before Kabuto could pluck the kunai out of his gut, a second searing kunai was jammed into his right elbow, then left shoulder and finally the back of his right knee. Kabuto was crumpled in a burning mess at Anko's feet, desperately trying any escape jutsu he could. Sadly, it wasn't meant to be, and Kabuto's world began to spin and the last thing his brain registered was his own kunai-ridden and burning body before his world went dark. Anko stood to her full height, wiped the sweat from her brow and let out a phew before she turned and took in the rest of the battlefield. Sadly, it looked like things were wrapping up. It was strangely disappointing for Anko, who always imagined a desperate fight lasting for hours if not days to finally avenge herself against her previous master. Anko walked over to the group that gathered up and saw that everyone was okay. Sakura was sporting a black eye, Kiba was roughed up, Hinata had blood on her uniform, Temari looked like she went a little wild, Choji looked exhausted, the Naruto clone sat with its eye closed in the lotus position and Tsunade looked disappointed. "What's wrong, mama?" Anko asked as she was within range. Tsunade growled, "The damned snake died too quickly. I didn't get to vent all of my anger on him." This earned a laugh from the group. It was Shisui, who was sitting on the ground and being tended to by Hinata, that looked up with a cheeky grin on his face. "Yeah, blow up a square mile of earth, obliterate a snake boss summon with one punch and put on a chakra light show for everyone, and that is light work." Ino giggled, "It is not mama's fault. She got spoiled by fighting against Naruto. He is probably the only person that can survive Mama's punch when she is serious. Hinata mirrored Ino's giggle. Yeah, sadly, this wasn't even a light day of training compared to our spars. Shisui's jaw was hanging low, and everyone laughed at the silly Uchiha. Finally, he snapped out of it and said, "Come again." Temari cut in here in front of Jiraiya, who was pouting that nobody was paying attention to him. "Look, Shisui, we each fought against Naruto daily. When we weren't doing that, we fought against the Kijin, Goblin Riders, Orcs, and we sparred against hordes of clones. To be honest, this was disappointing. How was your fight with Sasuke? I felt his cursed seal activate." Jiraiya thought he saw his opening and was about to step in, but Sakura answered, "It was scary. He was incredibly strong, and he fought us all off." Akamaru whimpered and Kiba growled lowly, "That seal and those eyes are cheating." Shisui ruffled his hair in a funny way. "Hey, don't blame our eyes. We have to train them to get strong." Shikamaru grumbled, "Yeah, troublesome clan and those bothersome eyes and that irksome Sasuke." Everyone saw a blinding flash of light encompass the area, and a second later the real Naruto appeared in a golden flash before he wrapped Temari, Ino and Samui into a hug. The girls squealed as they were each lifted off their feet and wrapped into a group hug. After giving each of them a kiss, Naruto turned to the group. "Okay, all clear. There are a couple chumps left hiding out in the base, but no biggie with them. Once the cursed seals are all deactivated, we can confirm Orochimaru is gone for sure. Anko, good job against the snake's fuck toy." Anko chuckled and Tayuya chimed in, "Man, I really wanted to kill Snake Face's fucking butt plug. That guy was such an super ass-licking douchebag. Good fucking riddance, sorry the butt-sucking motherfucker didn't put up a fight. Stupid cunt." Sakura blushed at the colorful language Tayuya was spouting and the group laughed uproariously. It was strange that teenagers that went through such a battle were so lax, but that is the effect of the adrenaline remaining in their systems. As everyone relaxed and prepared to enter the Chamber of Horrors, Naruto pulled Shisui aside. "How are you holding up? I felt that your battle was the toughest. That Kagaya was insanely strong." His voice was tinged with concern. "And how are your eyes?" Shisui chuckled and shook his head. "It is amazing how much you know about my clan. My eyes are fine but fading. Tsunade said that I should be able to take Makoto's eyes, since she is my aunt. Makoto could take mine, Itachi takes Fugaku's, and eventually, if Sasuke earns our trust back, he could take Itachi's." Naruto suppressed the cringe and forced himself to remember that this Sasuke hadn't fallen into the darkness yet. He took a deep breath and slowly opened his eyes, which wasn't missed by Shisui. "Good to know you have a plan. If Mama is on the case, then I know you will be fine. I trust you, Makoto and Itachi, but I want you to be careful with Sasuke." Shisui placed an understanding hand on Naruto's shoulder. "I know, Ruto. Thank you for taking him out without damaging him too much." Naruto sighed and decided to change the topic. "So, care to share the details of your battle?" Shisui chuckled painfully, due to the wound in his side. "Let's go to the others so that we can share this with them." Shisui vs Kimamaru. Shisui had darted into the fray and found his target. To be fair, the Kagaya had 2 red dots on the center of his forehead, and it was kind of hard to miss his presence. The Kagaya had already shed the upper part of his kimono and it lay limply over his belt. Shisui wished that he could use the Shunshin in this barrier, but he understood the need to disable the special movement. He separated the crowd with a massive fireball, and he was amused to see Temari flick one of her sensu fans and empower the already sizable blaze into an inferno. Shisui saw the Kagaya dodge to the left and land in a clear part of the battlefield. He disabled all of his seals and lashed out with the katana that Naruto had given to the clan all those years ago. He had named the sword, Fugaku's Inferno, to commemorate his fallen clan head. He gained the sword after Fugaku's death at Itachi and Makoto's insistence. He felt the natural flow of his fire chakra through the seal on the hilt and he engaged the Kagaya at close range. Kimamaru was an experienced fighter and his clan lived for battle. If he were in better health, he would have already activated the cursed seal and dispatched the foes of his master. As it were, Kimamaru knew he needed to pace himself and thus he was caught off guard when a flamed sword threatened to remove his head. Hardened forearms blocked the katana, and he hissed in pain as the skin on his forearms was singed. Kimimaro jumped back and pulled Tatanto-length pieces of bone out of his shoulder as he squared off against his adversary. Kimimaro was never one for words and he simply wished to kill the man that challenged him and his master. He darted towards the Uchiha that had a fully matured Sharingan activated and began a high-speed clash of chakra, steel and bone. Kimimaro noticed that his bone was losing out and the blades were glowing white due to the intense heat of the fire chakra. He went through 4 bone swords that were turned to ash after repeat clashes against the blazing katana. After the 4 sword, Kimimaro activated the first stage of his cursed seal of earth and his body cringed internally as the poisonous chakra flooded his system. Despite the dirty feeling, power saturated his bones as the power of the cursed seal spread. Bones sprouted out of his chest, back, elbow and shoulders which made him a supremely dangerous close-range threat. As the power spread, he knew that he could take it up a notch and Kimimaro called out, "Matsu no Mai." This was his third dance that incorporated all of the bone protrusions from his torso. Shisui raised an eyebrow at the form, but he knew that all Kagaya, especially ones with the dead bone pulse, were serious threats. Shisui noticed that the bones were stronger, and he pushed his Sharingan hard to keep up with the increased number of threats and speed that the cursed seal of earth bestowed upon Kimimaro. His Inferno sword clashed repeatedly against the hardened bone and Shisui noticed that it wasn't damaging the bones nearly as much. Shisui knew a change in tactics was necessary and he dropped 2 tags on the ground behind him. He had taken to incorporating seals in his combat style after getting closer to Naruto. He lured the Kagaya over the tags and formed a ram hand seal, which caused a burst of electricity to shock the Kagaya. This caused him to stumble in his dance and Shisui flipped through hand seals before blowing out an Uchiha-style Grand Fireball Jutsu. The prolonged duration of the fireball lasted for nearly 30 seconds as Shisui used every last bit of breath in his lungs to power the fireball and prolong its existence. Kimimaro turtled up in a bone encasing and despite his bones and the cursed seal he was feeling the burn. The heat of the flames threatened to boil his blood and the 30 seconds felt more like an eternity as Kimimaro's body screamed out in pain. This caused him to pull on the power of the cursed seal to weather the damage of the fireball. As the smoke and flames cleared, Kimimaro was panting, and he had transformed into a dragonoid bone monster. Knowing that he needed to go all out and that he didn't have much time in stage 2, Kimimaro called out, "Fourth dance, Tessenka no Mai," and he pulled out a greatsword made of his spinal cord out of his back. It was extremely gruesome and painful, but this was his second strongest attack. Shisui nearly emptied the contents of his stomach at the gruesome display. He was wary of the power, and he noticed the increased reach and threat that his tail represented. Shisui was forced to dodge out of repeated bone projectiles shot out of the Kagaya's fingers. Shisui kept dodging smoothly until 2 of the bone projectiles penetrated his right ribcage and shoulder. Shisui grunted in pain before he erected an earth wall to break contact. The earth wall was shredded by the spinal cord bone sword and Kimimaro was greeted with a face full of black flames. The dragonoid visage of Kimimaro roared in pain as the black flames seared into him. It was so painful that it took him a full 5 seconds to realize that he could form bones to push the black flames off of his body. Despite that jutsu took a sizable amount of chakra to repair the damage and Kimimaro bent over in a cough. Shisui saw the opening caused by the coughing Kagaya and he decided to take advantage. He sent out a brace of shuriken, blew out, fire style, flame flower jutsu, and encompassed each of the shuriken in flame. The 10 shuriken impacted Kimimaro's chest and back and caused him to roar out in pain once more before he dashed forward. Shisui noticed he was slower, stronger and more durable in this stage of the cursed seal, however, it was the stronger part that alerted Shisui. Kimimaro sent an underhanded slash along the surface of the earth that sent dust and debris flying into Shisui's eyes. He still blocked the lash of the spinal cord, but he wasn't ready for the spinal cord to bend around his sword and slash into his side. The wound wasn't too deep, but Shisui felt the hardened bone carve into his ribs and tear his flesh. Shisui jumped back and created space, knowing that he had to go all out against this opponent now, despite his rapidly degenerating condition. Shisui's Mangekyo flared and a fully developed upper body of the Susanoo appeared. Shisui's Susanoo wasn't the customary purple or black commonly associated with the ultimate jutsu of the Uchiha. Shisui's Susanoo was a dark red color, and the upper body of the warrior was fully armored. In its hands, it carried prayer beads and a two-handed great sword. Shisui commanded the ethereal warrior to lash out in a low, horizontal slash at the Kaguya. Even through the haze of insanity brought about by the cursed seal or earth, Kimimaro knew that he was in trouble. He was barely able to block and jump back from the great sword that threatened to bisect him at his waist. It was a good thing he didn't decide to tank the blow because the ethereal greatsword carved straight through the spinal cord chained sword that Kimimaro was wielding. As Kimimaro skidded backwards in his landing, he coughed out a lung full of blood. He knew that he had very little time remaining to serve his master and dispatch this enemy. With joy in his heart for finally being freed from his pain, Kimimaro launched into his last dance, Samurabi no Mai. Shisui could see and feel the massive buildup of chakra, and it was clear to Shisui that it was channeling into the ground. Shisui instinctively commanded his Susanoo to jump into the air, and a second later he was glad he did. In a 100-meter diameter, shards of bone nearly 5 feet tall raised out of the ground in an area of effect death blow. It was a ghastly and horrifying sight, and Shisui was glad he didn't take the full brunt of that attack. However, he had lost sight of the Kaguya and he was descending into the field of bones now. As Shisui was near landing, the Kaguya appeared out of one of the bone spikes and he had a massive bone drill on his right hand. Shisui commanded his Susanoo to perform a two-handed block with his greatsword, and he was horrified to see that the chakra sword only held briefly before cracking. The bone drill was beginning to penetrate Susanoo's chest armor when Shisui noticed the boy's head slack and his aura died out. With a massive sigh, Shisui released his Susanoo and grimaced as the wound in his side flared painfully. He looked around wearily at the localized devastation caused by his battle against the Kaguya and sincerely wished he could just sit down. With a sigh and a flick of his hair, Shisui limped toward where he could feel his allies. Task Force Anaconda, outside of Orochimaru's main base. The group had listened in rapt attention to Shisui's tale of the battle. It sounded epic, and they only need look toward the field of bone to believe every word Shisui said. His wounds were already healed, and a light bandage was applied to his right side. Everyone had taken the opportunity to catch their breath, snack a bit and drink some water. They also consolidated prisoners and prisoner scrolls, which were given to Naruto so that he could flash them back to Konoha after camp had been set up for the night. That meant that they had Karen Uzumaki, Suigetsu, Sasuke, Jugo and Gurren in stasis scrolls, and each one would be able to provide valuable intelligence on Orochimaru, or at the very least be an interesting experiment for the scientists of Konoha. Naruto would advocate for humane treatment, but if the crazy fucks didn't mellow out after he removed the cursed seals, then Naruto would have zero issues with sending them to the afterlife. Alright, everyone, just a bit left. This base is massive, and we will break up into teams. Be wary of traps, enemy shinobi, and the experiments that went wrong. When in doubt, seal it up. Shisui, please go and seal Kimimaro's body. That may very well be the last dead bone pulse user in the world, and I am sure we could learn something from his corpse. Mama, anything specifically that you need? Tsunade shrugged, not really. I am not the snake, I don't care for human experimentation. All notes and books are to be collected without being read. I will create a team to deal with all of the results of this twisted research. If anything is too far gone, kill it. It will be a mercy if the creatures we have seen so far are anything to go by. A tear fell from Hinata's cheek. She had slaughtered many experiments with well-placed arrows, but she agreed with Tsunade. The people were no longer sane, and many of them looked like they were in pain. Sniff. It is so sad what he did to them. I had to kill so many. Neji put an understanding hand on Hinata's shoulder. He saw everything with his Byakugan, and it was a gruesome sight. His fight against the Oto shinobi and the subsequent wave of human experiments was bloody and left him wanting a bath. He felt dirty, and moreover he felt sorry for what those human beings had gone through at the hands of Orochimaru. Finding the strength for his sister-cousin, Neji spoke up. You did the right thing, Lady Hinata. You freed them from their torment and suffering. A subdued Lee backed up Neji. Neji is right, Hinata. It was most unyouthful what Orochimaru did to those people. Their flames of youth no longer burned, and they needed to find rest in order to move on peacefully to the afterlife. Naruto decided a change in mood was needed. Lee, I think Shizuka has been good for you. That was the most normal speak I have ever heard from you. Everyone looked at Naruto's gigawatt smile and a bit of light penetrated the dark mood. Alright guys, just a bit more and we will be done. Nobody is to be alone inside the base. Move out. Konoha, 3 days after raid on Orochimaru's base. Task Force Anaconda appeared in a yellow flash outside of Konoha's gates and stunned the hell out of Izumo and Katetsu. Katetsu was reclining back in his chair with his head hanging back and drool dribbling down his left cheek. When the flash went off, he was instinctively startled and fell backwards in his chair, which earned a round of laughter from the newly arrived group. Izumo had been leaning against the guard shack and he startled so heavily that he gave himself whiplash. Recomposing himself, Izumo's eyes widened when he saw the group. Holy shit, Naruto, I will never, ever get used to that. Izumo said through his stupor. Katetsu rose from behind the guard shack and saw a shit-eating grin on Naruto's face. He yawned sleepily and rubbed the bump on the back of his head. Damn it, Naruto. Did you have to put your beacon right outside the guard shack? Naruto chuckled and cocked an eyebrow at the lazy duo. Maybe if you weren't napping it wouldn't startle you so much. Anyway, we are back, we have some guests prisoners. Mind calling the Anbu for us? Shisui piped in here, already have. Anbu tattoo, remember. Naruto scratched the back of his neck sheepishly. Oh, yeah. Never been a part of the Corps. Kinda forgot about that. Tsunade ruffled Naruto's hair. It's okay kiddo. Leave a clone behind and sign us in. One of you two, will you notify the Hokage and council of our return? Tell Itachi to call an emergency meeting. Izumo straightened up quick and snapped a salute. Yes, Lady Tsunade. Why did they do that for you? They always throw a cheap jab at me when I sign in. Jiraiya pouted. Katetsu suppressed a laugh and coughed. Lord Jiraiya, you typically don't sign in. And when you do, well, you always joke with us, so we return the favor. Naruto slapped a hand on Jiraiya's shoulder. Yeah, Mr. Super Pervert Grandfather. You earned it. After a round of laughter from the task force, a group of Anbu and a couple civilians showed up at the front gate. Naruto had 2 master scrolls linked around his back from all of the items sealed. Jiraiya had an extra master scroll on top of his usual one, Tsunade had 2 and almost everyone else was carrying one as well. The sacking of Odogakure came with a lot of items sealed over the last 5 days. The victorious group handed off the prisoner and stasis scrolls to the Anbu forces and they enjoyed their victory lap as they walked through Konoha towards the Hokage Tower. They drew many looks and evidently some of the citizens had heard about their mission to Oto. Crowds began gathering around and asking questions, but they were repeatedly told that they would need to wait for the announcement from the Hokage. Guy, Kakashi, Kurenai and Asuma had come to join their previous teams after news had spread. They walked behind the young task force with proud looks on their faces and they decided to accompany them into the council chambers. By the time they entered, the joint council of Konoha was summoned once more. Naruto hated this big council, and he preferred the new council setup, but he figured not even this big council could hate on him now. Task Force Anaconda halted in the center of the council chambers and waited for the Hokage to address them. Naruto noticed that Madame Shijimi was holding her tablet facing outward and Naruto gave a quick wink to Kinji before turning his eyes back toward Itachi. The mutterings of the room quickly quieted, and Itachi rose from his Hokage chair. Welcome back, Task Force Anaconda. I have shared your overall victory with the council already, but I have not heard the results. Naruto Senju Uzumaki, please inform this council of what happened during your mission. Naruto bowed and began to address the council while Tsunade watched on with a proud smirk on her face. Objectives 1, 2 and 3 are all complete. We moved from Kumo and attacked Odogakure from the north. We used my Sage mode to locate enemy locations and shinobi. We encountered Orochimaru and his main base on the 3rd day after sacking nearly 20 of his labs and killing nearly 40 Oto shinobi. Naruto was forced to pause here as the mutterings of the council became too loud for him to speak in an inside voice. Itachi banged his gavel and the room quieted down. He then addressed the council. Joint council, most of you are guests here. Please remain silent until I call for your opinions. The next person to disturb this meeting will be forced to leave and fined $1,000. Now, please continue, Naruto. Naruto flashed a smile toward Itachi. He truly appreciated his new control over the council. I sensed Orochimaru from a way out and I sensed multiple powerful chakra signatures moving toward his main base. It seems like he planned to ambush us, but we turned it around on him. I set up a total isolation barrier to lock the snake in. Task Force Anaconda proceeded to decimate over 300 enemy shinobi, which included Orochimaru, Kabuto, the last Kagaya and many others. There was a slight pause and Shikaku got approval to ask a question. Naruto, you said that was day 3. What have you been doing since then? Naruto answered with a smile, rather than leave a job half done, we completed our sweep of the land of rice paddies. We destroyed a total of 113 bases, and I don't care to think about the amount of enemy shinobi killed. I would rather tell this council that my task force saved the lives of over 1,000 civilians and other test subjects. We guided the survivors to the daimyo of Rice Country. Lord Kinji helped pressure him to provide shelter and safe passage to them. Thank you for that, Lord Kinji. Madam Shijimi chuckled, he said you are most welcome, my boy. Makoto stood up, what of Sasuke? Naruto offered a sincere and understanding smile to Makoto. Teams 7, 9 and 10 fought Sasuke. He was a fearsome opponent with the cursed seal of heaven that is level 2. My clone intervened when it looked like they were going to suffer casualties. Sasuke is currently in ANBU's care and was transported along with other shinobi of interest via stasis scroll. Makoto's hands clasped over her mouth. Is he going to be okay? Tsunade took a step forward and joined Naruto. Medically, other than the effects of the cursed seal, he is fine. Psychologically, we will need to be careful moving forward. The first priority will be removing and containing the cursed seals. Orochimaru uses the seals as a form of immortality and body transfer. He places a piece of his soul in each seal and that has very negative effects. Itachi decided to help his mother. Tayuya, could you explain the cursed seal more and describe what it was like to be freed from it? Tayuya looked sheepish, but she stepped next to Naruto. Lord Hokage, that fucking seal is a goddamn nightmare. It is like you are living on the edge of an abyss and the slightest tip of your emotions drags you into it. When you are in the abyss, you watch yourself do things you wouldn't normally do. It perverts your desires and corrupts your soul. Makoto started crying here and Tayuya's tone softened. Once I was free from it, I felt like myself for the first time in years. Orochimaru put the seal on me when I was 10. I used it often until Naruto removed it from me when I was 14. I believe Sasuke, and the others, will be okay, but the seal needs to be removed before you could possibly consider fixing anything else. Everyone looked with pity towards Makoto and Itachi. Itachi shook himself out of his despair and addressed Naruto. Will you be able to remove it safely? Naruto smirked confidently, with my new sage mode, it will be even easier than before. I didn't do it in the field because there were other priorities, and he was safe in a stasis scroll. Itachi nodded, very well, I will now open the floor with questions. Civilians will be asked to hold their questions seeing as this is a shinobi matter. Hiashi stood up. You said you have other shinobi, why did you save them? Naruto shrugged, I saved an Uzumaki with a powerful sensory ability called the Eye of Kagaya. I saved a crystal release user, a man that can enter sage mode naturally named Jugo, a male from the Hazuka clan and a couple others. As you can see, each person could bring value to Konoha. If not voluntarily, then by force if necessary. Hiruzen perked up at the mention of an Uzumaki, you found a true Uzumaki. Naruto stiffened slightly, yes, Karen Uzumaki. I felt her chakra and know it to be true. After checking the family registry, she is the daughter of my mother's cousin. And what is your plan for her? Hiruzen followed up. Family above all, always and forever. Naruto answered simply, which earned groans from the council. For those of you that don't know, I am the heir to daimyo of the land of eddies and land of waves. Karen will be offered the chance to return to her homeland and join my family. More groans from the council until someone shouted, what? So, you are just going to abandon Konoha? Itachi made a hand signal and Anbu dragged the man out by the collar of his shirt. Still, the question had been asked and Naruto needed to announce his intentions sooner or later. Naruto flashed into his golden sage mode and looked around at the shinobi and civilians gathered. I abandon nobody. I am honoring my ancestors by accepting the responsibility of the daimyo role. I am rebuilding my homeland and Wave has requested annexation upon my 21st birthday. I will serve Konoha as a shinobi until then. For those of you that weren't there the first time I said this, I will say it again. If you think you can control me, you can't. If you think you can manipulate me, you can't. If you think I will be contained to Konoha, you are delusional. If you dare harm those I love, I offer nothing but death. Alas, if you stay out of my way, I will make Konoha thrive along with the rest of our allies. I will help the elemental nations move out of its current cycle, and upon my 21st birthday, I will do so from Uzushio. Naruto's chakra was warm, and his feelings were conveyed openly through it. The weight of his chakra added emphasis and conviction to every word. Silence followed his statement, and Naruto could feel a variety of emotions. Some felt betrayed, some felt sad, some felt repentant, and there was a significant amount of greed and lust. It disgusted Naruto, and he really wanted to get out of this joint council. It wasn't necessary to move things forward. Itachi stood and looked around the council chamber. Understand this. Naruto is under my protection, the daimyo's protection, and the protection of our allies. It was on Lord Kinji's insistence that he revive Uzushio. Why would you let our strongest shinobi leave the village? Someone shouted and got murmurs of approval before that person was dragged out of the chamber. Itachi flared his chakra and activated his Sharingan. Silence. It is fools like that man that are the reason the Senju clan will leave Konoha. More shouts before Itachi flared up even more, and Anbu got involved. Shut the fuck up. You are guests in my council chambers. You were called here to listen to a mission report. Nothing more, nothing less. You will keep your mouths shut during my proceedings. In fact, Anbu, please escort the civilians aside from the core council out of the chambers. I am through with them. Task Force Anaconda and many shinobi watched on with an obvious amusement as the so-called influential civilian family heads were escorted from the council chambers while protesting loudly. After 10 minutes, a blessed silence overtook the council chambers once more, and everyone took a second to recenter themselves. Finally, Itachi spoke once more. Now, there is more to be covered. What did the Rice Daimyo have to say about our activities in Rice Country? Madame Shijimi spoke up here. He was forced to sanction it. Between wind, lightning, fire and wave, he had no alternative. He has signed an agreement not to harbor another shinobi village for the next 10 years. He is free to contract with other shinobi villages, but he cannot harbor his own force other than a samurai contingent. What of Orochimaru's remains? Hiruzen asked, feeling slightly guilty about the death of his old pupil. Jiraiya giggled. Heim smashed him. Wasn't much left, and all that was left was incinerated. Tsunade locked eyes with Hiruzen. I fought Orochimaru. He didn't even last 15 minutes. I should also mention that I killed Manda, and 2 of his oldest children also died to our task force. Anko spoke up here. I will have to go to Raichi Cave and speak with the White Snake Sage to figure out the snake summoning contract moving forward. Sasuke also has the snake contract, but after he used his Sharingan on the snake summons, I doubt he will remain a summoner. Itachi nodded. Very well. When that happens, I will expect a status update. Chusa Akamichi spoke up next. Were there any casualties on the task force? Tsunade fielded this question. All injuries were treatable in the field. After the amount of shinobi we faced and traps we triggered, it was inevitable. That being said, every member made it back in full health. Chusa retook his seat and Inoichi stood. Naruto, I will call you to Tandi tomorrow to remove the seals. What is your assessment of the prisoners? Gurren will be your biggest challenge. For reasons unknown, she was loyal to Orochimaru. They will each require extensive counseling and screening. Jugo is a safety risk and will need to be sealed until I can develop a seal to help him control his natural energy. You will also have to partner with the hospital because each of Orochimaru's followers were given a variety of strength-enhancing drugs. In time, I believe they are all convertible or usable given enough time. Naruto answered. After fielding some more questions from the clan heads, Itachi was going to bring the meeting to a close when Naruto spoke up. Lord Hokage, I request an audience with you and Lord Hiashi. I have uncovered sensitive information that I need to discuss with you too. Very well, the council is dismissed. Hiashi, are you free? Itachi asked. Hiashi nodded formally. Yes, Lord Hokage. Itachi, Hiashi, Naruto, Jiraiya and Tsunade moved into the Hokage's office and Naruto set up the privacy barrier for the group. They each got comfortable before Naruto spoke. Hisashi is under my protection and is residing in Uzushio, Naruto said, which earned faces of stunned disbelief. Hiashi, whose professional visage had completely collapsed, stuttered out, say what? Flashback, first morning of Snake Hunt. The clone Naruto formed while meditating moved out toward the two signatures he had sensed. They were in the mountains of Lightning Country, and they were heading towards Kumo. That meant that Naruto needed to get involved and stop them before anything else happened. The clone masked its presence by coating itself in nature chakra and closed the distance between his two queries. The clone continued to observe the two all day and watched as they scanned Kumo from a couple miles out. Naruto had already written to Ai and told him that he was tailing two Akatsuki. He told him to keep B and Yugito in the city and have a quick response squad ready for a signal. Ai had reluctantly agreed, and Naruto had informed his clone by quickly dispelling one clone. Finally, night settled on the two and the Naruto wood clone tracked them to a cave. He waited for a moment to ambush the two and sank into the ground without leaving a trace. Kisame liked fighting strong opponents and he joined the Akatsuki for that express purpose. He hadn't been disappointed thus far, but he sincerely hated always sleeping on the ground. He enjoyed having Hisashi with him because the range of the dude's Byakugan was insane and basically guaranteed that they couldn't be sneaked up on. Plus, the Hyuga was super polite, especially for a missing ninja. All in all, Kisame admitted that he had the best partner in the Akatsuki, and he trusted Hisashi, at least a little bit. Kisame took the second shift, which meant that he got to rest his weary eyes. He hated Kumo because he was in high altitude and the mountains didn't have much water. Therefore, he ended the day feeling dehydrated and exhausted. He lay in his sleeping bag with Samahata by his side. The shark skin sword snuggled into him and enjoyed snacking on his chakra overnight. Then, he was startled awake as strong wooden bindings lashed over his body and constricted him tightly. What the fuck? Kisame shouted. Scree. Samahata screeched as the Goldenwood clone placed its hand on Samahata. Kisame watched on in horror as Samahata ceased writhing and turned into stone. The sword was the greatest creation of Kurigakure and it had its own independent chakra system. That was why Kisame couldn't understand what was happening. Why was Samahata not simply absorbing the chakra? The Naruto clone left the sword in a stony state and placed its hand on Kisame's head. Kisame screamed as an unfamiliar energy entered his system. It overloaded his coils in a strange way and for the briefest instant, he felt more powerful. However, his body couldn't use this chakra and he watched on in morbid fascination as his fingers, toes, hands and feet began turning into stone. Then, the clone was forced to release its hold on Kisame as Hisashi came blurring forward with hands glowing with chakra. The clone dodged as it formed the snake seal and Kisame screamed as the wooden bindings turned thorny and tightened around him. Between the petrification of his hands and feet and the pain of the wooden thorns, Kisame could barely track the fight that was raging around the cave. He breathed out a sigh of sweet release when the wood stopped constricting and he was simply left immobilized. He sent the emergency signal through his ring and hoped that help would arrive in time. Hisashi struggled in his fight against the wood clone, and he could tell that the clone was guiding the fight outside of the cave. This was his first contact with Naruto since he left the village, so he decided to go along with it because he could tell the clone was holding back on him. Then, the clone grabbed him and literally chucked him to the mountain that was adjacent to the current one and Hisashi was no longer sure that Naruto was holding back. The Naruto clone smirked devilishly as he watched the black cloak sail across the gap between mountains and slam into it. He winced at the size of the indent and force of the impact, but it simply shrugged its shoulders before flashing over to Hisashi. The clone appeared above Hisashi with a palm extended and Hisashi couldn't fully dodge the impact of the clone's hand. He felt his body begin to stiffen before it locked up completely and he was caught in wooden bindings. How long do we have to talk before the fake Madara shows up in his spacetime jutsu? Naruto asked. Hisashi breathed a sigh of relief knowing that Naruto wasn't going to kill him. If Kisame activated the ring, then it could only be a minute or two. Naruto nodded. Do you wish to leave the Akatsuki and have a chance to reconnect with your son? Hisashi didn't even hesitate before his stoic facade cracked and nodded eagerly. Yes, I believe I have enough information. The Naruto clone nodded sadly. Okay then, this is gonna hurt. The ring is the connection to the Akatsuki, right? Hizashi nodded with a hesitant look on his face. I'll be as quick as possible. The Naruto clone activated the wooden bindings through the snake seal and thorny vines pierced Hizashi all over in non-vital places. Naruto acted quickly and severed the finger that held the Akatsuki ring, and he ripped the Akatsuki cloak off of Hizashi. He then used a wide-scale, Mokuten, violent deep forest emergence, which covered the mountain in viney trees. The trees avoided Hizashi, who looked confused by the display. Then, 10 clones sprouted around the pair and began having a crazy fight that began making craters and devastating the mountain. Pieces of the cloak were scattered everywhere, and the mountain looked as if a terrifying battle took place before a golden flash illuminated the dark of the mountain. Then, massive fireballs were shot into the air and toward the mountain that held Kisame. This was Kumo's cue to send the quick reaction force and the clones dispelled themselves. Hizashi opened his eyes as he heard the sound of the sea and he realized that he was in an oceanside home that looked out over the island and ocean. He looked at the clone, who offered him a simple smile as its hands glowed green and the warm comfort of the healing chakra encompassed his wounds. Hizashi soaked in the healing chakra, and he was content to wait for Naruto to begin the conversation. So, Hizashi, I guess I should start by telling you I am a wood clone. Hizashi blinked, and then blinked again, before his eyes went wide in disbelief. You bested 2's rank shinobi, and you are a wood clone. The Naruto clone simply shrugged and kept healing Hizashi. He grabbed Hizashi's right hand and made him wince as the clone began regrowing his finger. Boss gave me Kurama's chakra and I can enter my full sage mode. To be fair, I also ambushed Kisame, and you weren't really trying to fight me. Hizashi nodded dumbly before snapping out of it. You said I could reconnect with Neji and that I could leave the Akatsuki. Could you explain that for me? The clone chuckled as it kept at its work. Boss is the daimyo of these lands. He has already talked with Lord Kinji and Lord Hoto. They will grant your pardon in return for your service as an undercover agent. The clone paused its healing and reached into the pockets of its pants and pulled out the sealing scroll and letter. This will let you connect with your son. When the time is right, like when I get back to the village, I will bring Neji here. Hizashi began shedding tears as his white eyes watered over and went misty. Thank you. The clone shrugged before resuming its healing. Don't thank me, thank the boss. He felt super bad this whole time that he couldn't help you. That being said, if you could write up an intelligence report, that would be appreciated. Hizashi nodded. Yes, Lord Senju. The clone visibly cringed. None of that nonsense, Hizashi. It is just Naruto. We just need to know what is going on in Omegakure and Iwagakure. Also, how are Pain and Konan doing? Hizashi seemed shocked by that. How do you know the leader and his angel? The clone laughed. Secret. Anyway, I know the leader because he is a cousin of mine, and I had a chat with him a couple years back. Konan was also in on that conversation. Anyway, any updates on Akatsuki before I dispel and let boss know? Hizashi looked down at the ground. They caught and sealed the 3 tails. I was completely under their thumb and they are ready to move. They also have 10,000 white Zetsu clones that they can use to attack. The plant monsters can copy any chakra signature that they absorb. The first target is Suna, after Deidara and Sasori capture the one tail. The Naruto clone was shocked. Are they moving on Gaara already? Hizashi shrugged. Our last meeting was 3 days ago. We were told to scout Kumo and their Jinchuriki and Deidara and Sasori were sent to Suna. The clone nodded. Alright, I am going to dispel and let the boss know. End of flashback. It was Hiyashi that spoke first. Why did you never tell me of your arrangement with Hizashi? Naruto shrugged. Why would I make you a traitor by proxy? I have immunity and it is within my rights as a daimyo to pardon him. I have already spoken to Lord Kinji and Lord Hoto, and they agreed to pardon him. I simply took advantage of this opportunity to extract him. Itachi coughed. Look, the Hyuga business is important, but you are telling me that you took out Kisame Hoshigaki, the strongest of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, with a wood clone. Naruto sighed. No, sadly I did not. I thought I had him tied up and that Kumo would collect him, but Madara showed up and extracted him. Then a feral smirk graced Naruto's face. Although, he isn't nearly as much of a threat without his precious sword. Tsunade laughed. which made Itachi ask another question. How did you disable his sword though? Won't the effect wear off? Naruto laughed with Tsunade and Jiraiya, which made Itachi look around in confusion. Well, any sage would know that natural energy poisoning isn't reversible, especially with a sword that only has a simplistic chakra network. It is basically a stone club now. Itachi sighed and rubbed his temples. Why didn't you just kill him? Naruto stopped laughing abruptly, because I want the Akatsuki to fear me. I want them to feel hunted. I want them to know that only death awaits them at the end of their current path. I simply didn't feel like dealing with a chakra-eating sword that is a cheat code. Plus, this was an alibi for Hisashi, and I can finally live up to my promise to Neji. Hisashi bowed low to Naruto. Lord Senju, thank you for taking care of my brother. Hisashi then rose and bowed toward the Hokage. Lord Hokage, could you please allow Neji a week of leave so that he may reconnect with his father? Itachi nodded over his folded hands. Yes, I will allow it. Naruto, I know you know that he can't come back to Konoha. It would cause far too many issues. Naruto nodded. I know. I have allied the Uzumaki and Senju clans to the Hyuga clan. Now, we just have to negotiate a start to the Uzu branch of the Hyuga clan. Hisashi looked confused at Naruto. Come again. He said in startled confusion. Tsunade stepped in. We are going to harbor Hisashi. He can still find a second wife and start the Hyuga clan. If Neji is allowed to transfer once the island is up and running, then we will be able to start a Hyuga branch. We wanted to be upfront with our intentions to the Hyuga clan. Hisashi looked lost in thought before he slowly nodded. That will do for now. We can't do anything official until he is pardoned. When the time comes, we will form a stronger bond between our clans. I have already approved the Suna branch, so one more won't matter. Itachi, Tsunade and Jiraiya looked at him for further explanation. I approve the engagement of my daughter Hinata to Subaku no Gaara. Sunagakure no Sato 1 a.m., same evening of Task Force Anaconda's return. Sasori and Deidara were finally attempting their infiltration of Sunagakure. Sasori had to develop new, subconscious methods of mind control in order to get a spy in. Then, it was only good for a one-time use before the spy was caught. It was infuriating and it made it nearly impossible to discover a new way into the city. Yura, the last agent Sasori had, finally managed to add their chakra signatures to the detection barrier. This was the only real chance they had to accomplish their mission. Deidara, this is no time for theatrics. We are going into an enemy stronghold, and we need to extract the Ikibi Jinchuriki. According to our reports, he is much stronger than us in the desert terrain. Sasori, my man, I got this handled. You just keep the cage off me. This will be a blast. The cocky straw-haired man answered. Well, I will set up the summoning beacon once we enter Suna. This is a one-shot seal that will give us 20 reinforcements. Then, I will engage the cage. You draw the Jinchuriki into the sky. The hunchbacked man countered. It sounds like a blast, on. I will finally get to show everyone my art, on. Deidara said excitedly as he formed his clay bird that would fly him over the walls of Suna. The two infiltrated over the massive bowl-style walls that protected Suna, and Sasori's eyes would have widened in shock if he weren't a puppet. There was so much green in Suna that it amazed him, but he didn't have time to appreciate the scenery. Deidara's bird was already having to dodge multiple projectile weapons that were being enhanced with wind ninjutsu. It seems like they knew we were coming, on. Deidara shouted as he dodged another volley of high-speed metal instruments. Sasori growled before jumping off of the clay bird. I will handle them, you go accomplish your task. Sasori landed in front of the defenders that occupied the wall. Lay down your weapons and give up. Asuna Jonin, leader of the guard, shouted. A big, metallic tail lashed out from the man's cloak and was inches away from bisecting Asuna Ninja when a blue barrier shimmered to life and blocked the strike. Asuna Kunoichi with purple markings on her face was holding her hands out, and the group thanked her for blocking the attack. The fight on the wall continued, and Sasori was repeatedly surprised by the new tactics of his village, which were effective enough in delaying him from his mission. As the alarms sounded across Suna, Sand Shinobi blurred around the city and took up their defensive positions. Barriers were erected by squads of Sand Shinobi, and purple barriers formed defensive boxes over the evacuation shelters and high-value buildings. There were also shinobi heading to the taller rooftops as Deidara flew over the city. As for the mad bomber of Iwa, he was frustrated, and he was sending down clay swallows that dive-bombed the barriers. He shouted in anger and frustration as the birds had no effect on the barriers that were being erected all over the city. That was when he was forced to dodge through an insanely dense volley of sand and golden weapons. He continued to fly as he saw two figures rise into the sky on a sand cloud and a gold cloud. Gaara's head snapped to the battle on the wall as an explosion went off. "Father, I will handle this one. I have more sand at my disposal, which will aid me in this battle. Please go protect our comrades and eliminate the other intruder." If Naruto was right, it should be Sasori of the Red Sands. Raza looked unsure, but after looking at the determination on his son's face, he nodded. "I will, my son, be safe. I am proud of the fine man you have become." Gaara nodded slightly as his eyes locked back onto Deidara. "Kankuro should summon Naruto here. I have instructed him to play a defensive role and to let us handle our enemies. Suna doesn't need my brother to protect it anymore." As Raza flew away, he couldn't help but shake his head. "Bring victory to Suna, my son." Gaara sped up his sand cloud and began leaking sand out of the seal on his wrists and back. "Mother and Shukaku, it is time to put our skills to the test. I am counting on each of you," he thought into his seal. Shukaku let out an excited and powerful screech. "We got this, Gaara. Nobody attacks our home and gets away with it. Be safe, my son, I will handle the defense," Korora said through the seal. Gaara's aura flared, and a violent sandstorm chased through the air toward Deidara. As Gaara spun and controlled the wind and sands on his sand cloud, thoughts of Hinata flickered through his mind. Thoughts of the people of Suna and all of the bonds he has in this village invigorated him and lit a fiery determination behind his emerald eyes. Gaara's dance intensified and volley after volley of sand shurikens and sand arrows sailed through the air towards Deidara. Deidara was moving at high speeds, and he couldn't believe that the Suna Jinchuriki was able to keep up with him. He was putting so much effort into dodging the infinite sand attacks that he had little time to counterattack. His first real counterattack was ready as his clay bird barrel rolled over yet another volley of shuriken and Deidara released handfuls of miniature spiders that dropped through the air towards Gaara's position. Deidara held up a half-rammed seal with his right hand and yelled, "Katsu," with a tone of merriment. Gaara saw the spiders and waved a hand in front of himself as he spun and used his right hand to form the next volley of sand weapons. Immediately, a sand wall sprouted midair and caught all of the miniature spiders before they could get close to Gaara. He didn't even feel the air pressure from the explosions as his sand completely blocked the paltry attack. Gaara's left hand shot forward violently and a volley of sand spears blanketed the night skies. Gaara followed this up by taking a deep breath, pulling on Shukaku's chakra and blowing out a wind-style, great breakthrough. Deidara screeched in frustration and fear as a sand spear took the wing off of his clay bird and he began diving. Deciding not to waste the clay, Deidara guided the dive towards Gaara before he jumped off his bird and formed a new one in midair. The new bird leveled out before flying into the air away from a massive explosion that lit up the night sky above Suna. As he was climbing, Deidara turned around and sucked his teeth when he saw a ball of sand protecting the Jinchuriki from the explosion. "What do I have to do to get through that sand, on?" Deidara shouted. Having created enough space, Deidara thrust his hands back into his pouches to form his next attack. With Raza, he arrived at the fight that originated on the wall and it hand moved into a more open part on the border of Suna. He was proud to see his shinobi holding the enemy at bay, but he was worried by the 15 to 20 shinobi he saw laying around the battle area. All in all, his shinobi were holding on but needed desperate help. Thus, Raza took advantage of his element of surprise, and created 10 gold spears that hovered over his shoulders. Seeing an opening in the battle, he let them loose. 10 golden spears descend from above and created a massive sand screen as they impacted the ground all around the enemy. Raza descended with a golden yari, a spear-like weapon with an elongated blade, in hand and slashed at the attacker. His gold clashed against a steel tail before Raza flipped over the appendage as it lashed out. Raza landed and conjured a gold screen to block the volley of poisonous Senbon that were heading his way. Kankuro watched his father enter the battle and he immediately moved into a support position behind him. He unsealed Kurisu, Ant, Crow and 2 knights that carried big, reinforced shields. His puppets moved into flanking positions around his father, and Raza couldn't help but smirk at the thought of fighting side by side with his son. Barrier teams, now! Raza shouted as a barrier sprung up around Raza, Kankuro and Sasori. Sasori scowled at the thought of being trapped in a barrier. His main puppet body was fine, but Hiroko was shredded from the earlier gold spears. He watched Raza twirl the Yari as puppets flanked him. Big mistake, Cage. You will not be the first Cage I have killed. Raza laughed, come on out of the puppet body and fight us. You aren't going anywhere until you get through me. Sasori disassembled Hiroku in its emergency release and a small, redhead teenage boy emerged. Upon closer inspection, the tousled redhead's body was puppet-like and composed of wood. A scroll popped into its hand and audible gasps sounded as the third Cage appeared in puppet form. The legendary third Cage took up position in front of Sasori, and the dreaded iron sand began leaking out of a seal on the puppet. Despicable! Raza snarled, before slightly turning his head to Kankuro and whispering, look for an opening. Don't rush and don't expose yourself. Sasori decided to open the attack, and a wave of iron sand soaked in a purple poison crashed against a wall of golden sand. Sasori was forced to dodge as Kurisu attacked from his left flank with a massive stream of fire. As Sasori leapt over the stream of fire, Ant came hurtling at him and tackled him. This disrupted his control over the iron sand, and he snarled as a volley of golden shuriken sailed at him. Sasori twitched the chakra thread on his fingers, and the golden shuriken were stopped by a wall of iron sand before a spear of iron was launched towards Ant. A puppet with a big shield moved forward and blocked the spear before Sasori was forced to dodge out of a volley of Senbon from Kurisu. Sasori watched in amazement as the volley of Senbon remained sustained as they soared through a hole in his iron wall created by the golden dust. All in all, Sasori was forced to fight a defensive battle, and it remained in a state of high-speed combat for over 15 minutes. The barrier teams remained aware, and Sasori wondered why they didn't drop the barrier to support their Cage. Sure, Raza didn't really need the help, but fighting in this contained space wasn't Sasori's style. The father-son duo proved more than a match for him as multiple scuffs and a couple holes riddled his puppet body. Back in the sky, Gaara and Deidara had been engaged in a dogfight. It was frustrating for Gaara, and he was starting to get bored. The multitude of explosions that were all blocked and countered by Gaara's sand infuriated the blonde Akatsuki member, and Gaara couldn't stop a bemused smile from the blonde's explicative speech. That being said, Gaara had used the opportunity to lace the air with his sand, and he was ready to spring his trap. Deidara was ready to go to the big guns. After so much of his art was shrugged off, he could no longer stand the embarrassment and degradation of his art. Deidara pulled over half of the clay remaining out of his pouches and shoved it into his mouth. As he was chewing on the clay and shaping his ultimate jutsu, his eyes widened as he was surrounded on every side by marble-sized balls of sand that were floating in the air. He looked in a state of stunned disbelief toward the Suna Jinchuriki and saw the smirk on his face. Gaara spread his arms open wide with all of his fingers spread. He then brought his hands together and intertwined his fingers in a quick motion. As if moved by divine winds, the minefield of marbled sand crashed into Deidara on all sides. There was nothing left of his bird, as it looked like the victim of an overzealous hunter that just unloaded every shell in the shotgun on a simple dove. As for Deidara, he had hardened his skin with a quick earth jutsu, but each of those marbles hit him with devastating effect. His arms were bleeding all over as multiple marbles impaled and exploded in his body. His legs were shredded as he fell through the air, but the important thing was Deidara's torso was intact. Deidara vomited up a big, fat clay version of himself and cackled through a mouthful of blood. Gaara sensed the buildup of chakra, and his eyes widened as the clay creation enlarged further and began to glow as it hurtled toward Suna. Gaara also saw a flock of high-speed clay birds flying towards him, which meant he had to work on two fronts. Gaara roared as he crouched and brought his right hand up in a bowl while his left hand shot forward in a stop gesture. Sand from the floor of Suna answered his call and formed a pillar of sand that began forming a defensive bowl that covered Suna from the falling clay bomb. Smaller explosions lit the night sky before a massive explosion sent shockwaves rippling into the defensive barriers through the defensive sand jutsu that Gaara formed. The massive sand construct remained upright despite the violent explosion that the giant bowl had angled into the air. The shattering sound dispersed as quick as it came, and an unsettling quiet settled over the skies of Suna. Gaara was panting and down on a knee as the effort of his exertion stressed his chakra coils and stamina. His left hand was still extended outward, and a figure was hovering towards him on a small cloud of sand. The figure was bleeding all over, his arms and legs flayed like a ragdoll with its strings cut at his sides, and he was cursing weakly under his breath. Sand fell out of the sky and showered Suna as Gaara brought his enemy closer and stood to his feet on his sand cloud. You were, are, and always will be a pitiful opponent. Your explosions could never penetrate the ultimate defense of Sunagakure, Gaara said after regaining his breath and strength. Shukaku was working internally to provide strength and support to Gaara's strained chakra coils. The blonde Akatsuki member stopped his incessant rambling and glared at Gaara. This isn't over, Ikibi Jinchuriki. After all, art is an explosion. The insane shout and glowing figure of the man alarmed Gaara, and he immediately covered the man in his sand. He kept piling on as much as he could call upon when a brilliant light escaped through cracks in the sand. Following the light was a bone-shattering and brain-shaking explosion that broke through Gaara's sand as if it were tissue paper. The explosion lit up the night sky above Suna once more in a brilliant white glow, and the visage of a mother cradling her arms protectively over a bundle flashed in the night sky. The intense fight between Sasori, Raza and Kankuro was intense, but a moment of distraction allowed Sasori to take advantage of the opportunity. As gold fought against iron, Sasori extended his right hand and latched a chakra thread onto the disposed metal tail of the Hiroku puppet. With strength and speed that would astound anybody that didn't know Suna's puppet techniques, the tail sailed through the arm and nearly severed Raza's arm at the bicep. Raza, cursed as his right arm, cried out in pain, but Raza didn't hesitate even for a second. A blade of gold formed in his left hand, and he severed his arm just below the head of the humorist before he plugged the wound with gold dust. His supporters cried out in distress as their cage was injured and now at a significant disadvantage. Raza's brief distraction meant that 4 iron spears were heading straight for him, and there was nothing he could do about it. Kankuro immediately called the 2 knights into defensive positions in front of his father, and the 4 spears echoed against shields before Kankuro used his left hand to activate a hidden function of Black Ant. With a sad look on his face, despite the extreme focus and beads of sweat, Kankuro sacrificed Black Ant to neutralize the threat. Kankuro activated the seal on Black Ant's chest that created a powerful implosion that sucked in everything around it for 10 meters. Sasori's eyes widened as the third cage was swallowed by a black sphere that immediately compressed into itself. He had never seen such a technique, and he was startled by the loss of his puppet. As he was reaching for his scroll that contained his 100 puppets technique, Sasori was encased in a massive wave of gold dust. Before he could break free, he heard the last words that he would ever hear: Golden Mausoleum. As soon as the hardened golden pyramid ended the battle against Sasori by sealing him away, the barrier fell, and medical support poured in for the wounded cage. Turns out, Raza and Kankuro slumped over in exhausting, and they both had minor wounds that were leaking the powerful neurotoxin that Sasori used to coat his weapons. As the medics were doing their thing, one Suna Jonin took charge. Baki barked out orders: Yoshimaru, go and summon Naruto Senju. He should have been here already. Yes sir, Yoshimaru answered before adding, it was Kankuro's duty to summon Naruto. Baki face-palmed himself. Kankuro was such an excitable boy, and he forgot to summon their strongest ally to a fight where he was needed. Now, their cage was wounded and poisoned. Just go, Yoshimaru. Send him an emergency message to bring Tsunade and other medical personnel. At that moment, Gaara landed from his sand cloud to the cheers of the Suna shinobi. He saw the downed form of his father and Kankuro before he demanded an explanation from Baki. When Baki told him that Kankuro joined the fight before summoning Naruto, Gaara too facepalmed and cursed his brother's forgetfulness. Finally, he took charge and helped Baki direct the Suna shinobi. Himitsu, create scout squads and sweep the city. Tode, get with the barrier corps and have them search for any foreign chakra signatures. Mayuri, get the hospital ready for a mass casualty situation. Baki, I leave the perimeter sweep to you and a platoon of your choice. Gaara shouted out orders, and a stunned and silent respect fell over the crowd before they were spurred into action. Minutes later, Tsunade, Temari, Naruto and Hinata appeared in a flash next to Gaara, and Naruto immediately hugged his brother before he chastised him. "You should have called me, Baka Broer." Gaara leaned into Naruto's supportive hug and appreciated the chakra boost that he was receiving. "I know, Ruto. It was Kankuro's job, but he prioritized fighting Sasori with my father over summoning you." Naruto chuckled. "That's so, Kankuro." Gaara sighed as Naruto released the hug and a pale-eyed princess jumped into his arms. "I know, I will assign another person I trust to that duty." Gaara then turned his attention to a distressed Hinata, which prompted Naruto to walk away. Tsunade was running diagnostics on Raza and Kankuro, and she looked up as Naruto approached. "Any chance your sage mode can remove this poison?" Naruto shrugged. "You know I am a decent medic at best, mama. We have poisoned weapons lying all over the place." Baki, which weapon poisoned Raza and Kankuro? Baki looked over from the squad of dust he was giving instructions to. The big metal tail for the cage, and Kankuro got hit by some of the iron sand of Lord Third. "Gotcha," Naruto answered nonchalantly before turning to Tsunade. "I will place them in medical stasis to buy you time. If you need me to grow anything, let me know." Tsunade nodded. "Hinata, work with the Suna medics to get these two to the hospital. Then, you will report to the labs to help me identify this poison and develop an antidote. Temari, why don't you work with Gaara to get order restored here?" Temari's worried face offered Tsunade a weak smile. "Will do, mama." 2 days later, Suna Hospital. Raza cracked his eyes open and winced at the harsh white light that he instantly associated with a hospital room. After his eyes adjusted, Raza noticed that Pakura was sleeping at his bedside along with Temari, and he saw a Suna nurse looking over charts at the foot of a medical bed next to his. Raza saw that Kankuro was sleeping in the bed next to his, and his heart froze in anticipation. Through a parched throat, Raza croaked. "Excuse me, miss, is my son going to be okay?" The nurse turned and offered him a genuine smile. "Lord Cage, it is good to see you awake. Kankuro has been given the same antidote that you have. He has stabilized, and Lady Senju is in charge of your care. You will both be fine, well, aside from your arm." Raza winced as phantom pain shot up his right shoulder, and he sighed when he saw that nothing was connected to the shoulder other than a stump. He brought his left hand to his face and leaned his head back into the pillow. "Thank you, miss. Is Gaara okay?" "Yes, Lord Cage. Lord Gaara killed Deidara the Mad Bomber and protected everyone from that giant explosion. He is currently working as the Cage while you were indisposed," she answered. The noise of the conversation stirred Temari awake, and she instantly lunged into a hug and embraced her father. "I am so glad you're okay, Dad." Raza winced in pain before he used his left arm and pulled Temari into an embrace and smiled against the top of her head. "I will be fine, kiddo. What have I missed?" Temari backed away from the hug and took on a more professional manner. "Lady Tsunade and Hinata worked to create the antidote. They have administered it to the squads that initially held off Sasori. There were 10 dead, but we have stabilized 8 and the remaining injuries were minor. Gaara fought Deidara in single combat and won, but the crazy fucker blew himself up, so there is no body. Gaara stopped most of the damage to the city and we have secured the village and surrounding area." Raza nodded. "Very good. What about Suna since the fight?" Temari smiled. "Brother has stepped into the role of Cage. He is working with Naruto to repair any damages and secure the village. Lord Hodo is here and offering his support. Konoha also sent over 4 squads to help provide added security, and we have them rotating on watch duty. They also donated a couple medical personnel to aid in treating the wounded." Raza smiled at that. It was good to have allies. "Very good." Raza was cut off as Naruto and Gaara entered the room with massive smiles on their faces. Naruto let Gaara take the lead. "Father, it is good to see you awake. How are you feeling?" Raza groaned. "Like I went off on a week-long bender and I just woke up to the hangover." Naruto belted out a laugh and settled into a gigawatt smile. The laugh stirred Kankuro awake with a groan, and he groaned louder when Naruto slapped his foot playfully. "Papa Raza, everything is fine. Just listen to mama and get better. I am working on a project with the puppet corps to get you a new and improved right arm." Raza's groan transitioned to a chuckle at the radiant positivity of Naruto. "Thanks, Ruto. I would appreciate that." Raza turned his attention to Gaara. Anything I need to be made aware of? Gaara shrugged and replied in monotone, I have things handled for now, father. I am sure there will be a council meeting once people hear that you are awake. Raza groaned once more, can you handle that for your old man? This question earned understanding chuckles from those around the room. Yes, father, I can. Gaara answered monotonously with a gentle smile on his face. Kankuro took this opportunity to chime in, is Sasori dead? Temari answered, yes, father sealed him away in his golden mausoleum. Kankuro's celebration was halted when he thought of Black Ant. Ah, man, I had to sacrifice Black Ant. Gaara's snide remark drew snickers from everyone in the room. Yeah, well, maybe if you called Naruto as planned, he could have stepped in. Tell me, brother, why didn't you summon Naruto before joining father's battle? Kankuro rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly and refused to look anybody in the eye. Yeah, well, about that, I kinda forgot. A sand hand clapped Kankuro upside his head before Raza halted any further humiliation of Kankuro. Gaara, it is not a bad thing for Suna to defend itself. Ruto's help is appreciated, but we can't expect him to fight all our battles for us. Gaara resealed his sand and it was Naruto's turn to look sheepish, but it was Temari that spoke. You men and your stupid pride. There is no shame asking for help against ranked opponents while trying to protect your people. Ruto loves Suna as much as Konoha and he is just as much a part of our village as any of us. Temari's flaring temper cowed the two Subaku men and Gaara was just watching with his arms crossed over his chest. Raza put up his single hand in a defensive gesture while Kankuro was hiding behind his two hands. I am sorry, sis. I saw people dying and dad needed help, so I forgot, okay. It won't happen again. Temari's rage fizzled out and she sighed deeply, alright, well, get some rest and we will be back tomorrow. With that, the visitors left Raza and Kankuro to get some much needed rest as their bodies healed from an intense fight and a severe turned mild case of deadly poison. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and I'll catch you in the next part.